Online and in the Odyssey app at The Fan Rochester. The sports leader, 95.7 FM and AM 950. The Fan Rochester, an Odyssey sports station.
It's time to start the show and talk about the sports we saw. Inside jokes and takes from Danger and Battaglia. Bills and the Sabres and the Ambers. Who gave a microphone to these jerks? Welcome to the sports bar, that's where you are. Welcome to the sports bar, that's where you are. Welcome to the sports bar, that's where you are. With Danger and Battaglia.
Yes, it's draft week. You have found the sports bar. Welcome to Rochester's only local sports talk show here in my hometown, Gene Battaglia. Your hometown as well, buddy.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, Tim Schneider in for Danger, because Mike Danger has a lot of responsibilities with our company. He likes to say on assignment, I'll tell everyone where he is. He's in New Orleans meeting his new staff today. It's easier to meet him. I told him when he's down there if he could meet Bobby Bear. Remember the Saints quarterback?
I do, yeah.
He's doing his own afternoon sports talk show. If you can imagine this, we do 3 hours. He does 5, 2 to 7 every day. WWL, which is like the big blowtorch signal down there in New Orleans. So
that's a lot of radio every day.
Yeah. But Danger doesn't manage that station. He's managing the Top 40 station, like he manages PXY here and some others around the country. And the reason he chose today, well, because Thursday's the draft. So you don't have to worry about that. Danger, lots of friends. Join us again Thursday, Three Heads Brewing, Atlantic Avenue, Neighborhood of the Arts, where it's a great day and a great time to have a kind IPA. Tim Schneider is in today as well. Tim, before we set up the show today, let's congratulate one of our own.
Yeah.
Because today's, I wish we had something like this in Rochester. In Buffalo, today is Dingus Day.
Correct.
Which, I mean, if you had to separate, okay, what are some of the differences between Rochester and Buffalo? Professional lacrosse. Yeah. No, we don't jive. The other is, like, once you get to Batavia, it's like, oh, yeah, that's that weird holiday where they whip each other with pussy willows or whatever it is.
I'm not familiar with that one.
No, that's Dingus Day. Yeah, that's the tradition. They also have out in Boston Patriots Day. Now, it's just coincidental that the day after Easter, that's when Patriots Day is this year, which means it's the day they run the Boston Marathon. And Rochester's own Joey Whalen, great friend of the show, he finished 20th overall today. If you could imagine this, Joey Whalen, 2:12:16, Boston Marathon. Now, this is like the best in the world that's running this. So great for him today. I'm not sure where that placed him amongst American finishers, but 20th overall. He may be calling in at the end of the show today, trying to work that out. So that is fantastic. So congratulations to Joey, and we're very rock proud here on the show. Obviously. Again, our number, 866-4326, 866-4FAN. With it being draft week, let's go to the best here. Coming up in the 4 o'clock hour, Nate Geary, WGR, Buffalo Bills Radio Network, as what do the Bills do? What are their needs? What does Nate want to see this team do? We haven't talked to Nate and get his thoughts about what his dream list is going to be, because he's going to be anchoring a lot of that coverage coming up this weekend once again. Nate Geary, WGR, and the Buffalo Bills Radio Network coming up at about 4:30. Coming up at the bottom of this hour, I love when we get the chance to talk to Chris Trapasso. He's based out of the 585 area code. He is national with CBS Sports, and he's going to give us a few good minutes. So the way I envision our conversation with Chris Trapasso, Tim, is like this. Ask him some of the big picture questions about this draft, because like any other draft, there's some mystery, there's some misinformation. What can we expect coming up Thursday night? And as far as value at pick 30 or the second round, and what could the Buffalo Bills be doing in the later rounds? Chris, you hear him from time to time on One Bills Live as well. So fortunate enough to talk to Chris today, coming up at the bottom of this hour. Again, time for your calls at 866-4FAN, 866-4326. You can write to us on X. The Fan Rochester is our handle. But as you know, or may not know, if it's just me and Tim on the show today, if you want that instant gratification, probably phones are the best way to go, because I'm only going to be looking at X when we go to the commercial break. The proverbial table is set. Let's start with the Amherst. Not a surprise that they get the second seed. We've known that for some time. Not a surprise that we get Syracuse again. Syracuse, a team.
Every year.
Yeah. Do you realize, Tim, that coming up Friday night, in the last 2 years plus this matchup, this will be the 35th time these two teams have played?
Yeah, that's half of a season amongst one team, and they don't like each other. Like it's a different style of play than it was in the 90s where there were 4 fights a period. This is going to be a physical series that could go 3, it could go 5. It's going to be some great playoff hockey here Friday and Sunday at the BCA.
So this is my annual why do we do this here? Meaning, if you're not familiar with the playoff schedule, it begins Friday. If it goes to the full 5, Game 5 is Friday, May 9th. The NBA playoffs thinks that's a whacked out schedule. I know why we do this, Tim, for the American Hockey League. They want to make sure that you get the gate coming up Friday and Saturday and Friday and Saturday. In this case, for the Amherst, it's Friday, Sunday, Thursday, Saturday for Syracuse, and then we got to wait. We got to wait all the way. I wish that we had the Calder Cup Finals wrapping up sometime Memorial Day weekend.
Right.
We had the semis. It's just way too long, way too stretched out. But on top of that, my bigger bone to pick is a best of 5? Isn't this a developmental league? Wouldn't you want guys understanding what a best of 7 kind of feels like? So for all these divisional rounds, for the Amherst here, well, actually for Cleveland and Toronto, they've got to play a best of 3 to determine who plays Laval. I'm rooting for Toronto there because I would love to see the Leafs against the Canadiens there, but I digress. Best of 5? Why wouldn't you want a best of 7 in these series?
You would want a best of 7, and it's got to be just a workload thing. They've already played 72 games, and the season's going to go to damn near July 1st, so they might be trying to squish a little bit there. But 7-game series is what happens once you get further down, but I think that it should be 7 all the way through.
Yeah, you got to wait till the conference finals, and that's where the Amherst bowed out to Hershey a couple years ago. So that's just – and again, I've talked to people in the sport that think that's wrong. If this is a developmental league – don't worry about the gate there per se. And by the way, we're a pretty good hockey town. We just pat ourselves on the back. Friday night, somebody was asking me what could we expect. Is it ridiculous to think $10,000 on a short week? I don't know if it sells out, but I'm going to be curious to see how the tickets.
I think we push 10 on Friday and 8 or so on Sunday. It's good hockey, and you'll have people traveling in from Syracuse too. Like we're going to fill the BCA this week. And hopefully this goes all the way through the end of June because this team is something special. But again, it's playoff hockey, and it could be done in a week, and it could be 2.5 months down the road here.
Mike Leone, Amherst head coach, joins us tomorrow as he does every Tuesday at 4:25. If you missed it from Friday, I can't believe the Sabres actually did the right thing, sending back Yuri Kulik along with everybody else.
That's big time.
Yeah, that's big time. Yeah.
Hopefully he comes in and he played a game earlier this year before he went up to Buffalo and stayed. Like he's gonna be fine because he's a great hockey player. But the chemistry I hope that they've established throughout this season, hope it's not infiltrated by just a talented hockey player.
Well, that's it's a good problem for Michael Leone to have because if you're trying to figure out the lines here, and if it's me, you're putting Rosane and Kulik together. Like you're putting your foot to the pedal with those guys, but who then you pair up on the other side? It's going to be fascinating to see how kind of again, it's not a short week. These guys are practicing. So the Amherst over the weekend, for what it was worth, they wrapped up against Toronto, lost in overtime. Whatever.
They had the Toronto. It stunk because Toronto didn't even care at that point. They had wrapped up they were locked into the play-in round. They played a bunch of ECHL guys, and they still came back from a 2-0 hole, which is a sour thing to sit through for a week as you got playoff hockey on the horizon here in Rochester. But at the end of the day, it was inconsequential, and they've got a week to figure it out and take care of business against Syracuse. Yeah.
So if you want to talk some Amherst hockey, you're certainly welcome to it. 866-4326 is this town. People got a taste of this 2 years ago. Can you imagine if it got a step further at the actual Calder Cup Finals?
I remember
like,
it as a kid. I
yeah.
missed the days. I remember vividly sitting in the Blue Cross Arena, the War Memorial, I think it was at that point still, just the barn, 1996, winning that Calder Cup championship as an 8-year-old kid. It's why I fell in love with the sport. Like,
You think about how long ago that was, Tim.
yeah,
The Blue
I'm old
Cross
now.
Arena, the seating capacity wasn't even where you have kind of the overhang, the nest area up or whatever
Yeah,
they call
that
it.
didn't exist.
Didn't
It was
exist.
a
Like
stage.
the stage was still in existence. Isn't that unbelievable?
It's crazy how far we've come.
Yeah.
Despite, I mean, there's still
Oh, how
things to look
far we
forward to,
come!
right?
Like how 19 years is like poof, gone.
It's
Just like that.
close to 30 now. 96.
Oh,
It's okay. Math.
math is my friend, not my friend.
That was an unbelievable series.
Mhm.
The whole season was special
Mm-hmm.
because they had the greatest hockey jerseys of all time that year. They were not a good team during the regular season. They snuck into the playoffs and they made a run, and it was pretty glorious being in that building as a kid, just watching. You were there.
Yeah.
It's something that I hope that the children of today's get to experience this year.
It was everybody chanting, "We want the cup, we want the cup," and gosh, when they replayed that a few years ago, they dug it out and it was live on Channel 10 years ago, and they
Yeah,
played it
during
up.
COVID,
During
we played
COVID,
it.
we replayed it, and it's like, wow, to hear Don call the game and everything, it was. I think it's the Portland Pirates. So we will talk to our good friend Mike Leone. That is coming up tomorrow on the show. When Chris Trapasso comes on, bottom of the hour here, I think a lot of the mystery at the top of the draft, Tim, it's not there. I think we've known for weeks Cam Ward is a selection at number 1. Now, you come in and out, reintroduce yourself here to our audience. Terrible take, Timmy, a.k.a. terrible time, terrible. You became terrible time, Timmy, way long ago for your antics on CMF.
Yes.
And then you became terrible take, Timmy, on our show because you had the audacity to call Taron Johnson average.
Yeah, he's a guy.
No, he's not a guy.
He's a guy.
No. This is you being dumb now because you got obliterated, and I appreciate everybody but that stuck. Now you're terrible take. You're not a Bills fan. You grew up with the loyalties to Cleveland, which that's fine, and you've stuck with them. If you are a Cleveland fan today, I know you're not a front runner, so you are not a front runner. So that brings us up to speed here. Are we in agreement that this is the right pick? This is actually happening. That Travis Hunter at number 2 to the Browns will actually happen.
I've come to terms with it. I don't know if I'm all in on it, but similar to when they chose Baker Mayfield over the gluttony of quarterbacks, including Josh Allen. Josh Allen was my guy that year. I was content with whoever they chose as their guy. It was Baker Mayfield, and it was what it was. And I'm kind of that way now. Like, there's 4 guys that I like, and I have a preference in order. Travis Hunter is 3rd or 4th on that list.
Really?
But if that's what the Browns want, that's what the Browns
All right,
have
then
decided.
who's your preference?
I wanted Cam Ward, but I understand.
Okay, well,
now that that's
not
possible.
available. So when you're on the clock, who's your preference?
I want Carter, Abdul Carter.
Okay.
You pair him with Myles Garrett, and you wreak havoc defensively. And the quarterback situation stinks, so it doesn't matter if you've got Travis Hunter, if you've got Kenny Pickett slinging it to him, and Joe Flacco.
Well, this is where I think you and I, we could do like the handshake, the arm wrestle thing, whatever meme you want to put together. I honestly believe that this draft will go like last year for Buffalo. Move down. Not because you may not like somebody at 30. It's because you're going to have teams that you may like Jackson Dart. You may like Jalen Milroe, but no, not in the top 10, not in the top 15. But if you're there in the second round, would Cleveland be patient enough with other quarterbacks, needy teams, Giants, Jets, Raiders? Who else do you want to throw in there? Picking out at the top of the second round who may jump you. Like, is there a quarterback from everything you're reading? Because the Browns at 33, they begin the second round. Do the Browns actually trade back into the first round of this draft?
Yeah, I have been wondering as this process has kind of played out. I do have a feeling, kind of like what the Ravens did years ago with Lamar Jackson. They bought back into the round. It's not impossible to think that the Browns can take 33, turn it into 30, and give up a couple of later round picks for that, and then the Bills get more draft capital, and the Browns get whoever they determine is their guy at 30. I personally don't have any desire to draft a quarterback in that spot, especially to trade up, but it's possible.
Yeah.
And perhaps even likely because they have to do something. You can't rely on 58-year-old Joe Flacco and crummy Kenny Pickett to win you football games in 2025 and 2026. It's just not realistic. So they've got to find somebody.
I don't think he's 58.
He's 40-something.
You get to a certain age, it's like, oh, does it matter? He's old. No, yeah, you're right. I think you have a generational talent in Travis Hunter. You will be happy. My question is, are they going to be able to manage him correctly?
No, it's the Cleveland Browns. They can't do anything correctly. That's the thing. Like they're going to go and get their guy, and he's not going to be as good as he should or could be because it's Cleveland. It's very similar to the Sabres. You go there and you don't find success and you just wither away, and then you go somewhere else and you succeed. Baker Mayfield is a prime example of that. He got a raw deal in Cleveland. He struggled for a year in Carolina, kind of found his way, and he's no superstar, but he's an adequate quarterback who's now getting paid very handsomely to be average. Like Baker Mayfield's also a guy, but I'll take him on my team over Kenny Pickett. What are we doing?
Well, Baker Mayfield, I mean, we could go back in time, but like he led the Browns to the playoffs. He gets hurt. He's playing, not injured, playing hurt. There's a difference. And those decision makers didn't kind of realize that at the time. Like you could retrace the steps with Deshaun Watson, how everything, but like the idea that Watson, gosh, you're going to be like biting the bullet on this until next year. You're hoping that there's some magic get out of jail card there for the Browns in terms of Deshaun Watson.
Yeah, that just needs to, well, one, as we said, when the day it happened, it should not have happened. Now we're 3 years into the process, and it just needs to go away. Like, cut your losses. If it's cap hell, so be it. Just move on, be done with it, and move forward like it never happened, because it really never happened. He hasn't done anything. He hasn't been healthy. Not even bringing up what makes him such a good guy. Like he's made Cleveland's life hell for 3 seasons, and it's their own fault.
So there's another thing too. Like when it comes to the variance in this draft, like we say this, but ultimately, would it shock me if Shedeur Sanders got picked by the Browns? Actually, no, it wouldn't. Like, there's variance in Shedeur Sanders. It wouldn't surprise me if it went 2. Wouldn't surprise me if he went number 21. Ultimately, I think it's the Saints at 9. If I had to pick a landing spot for Shedeur Sanders. This isn't a Shedeur Sanders point I wanted to make. There's another player that I think has a lot of variance, because when this draft process started, we were all doing our mock drafts, and we're thinking, oh, the Cowboys, they really, really need a running back. Why not get the best running back in Ashton Genty? Ashton Genty, we all love him. He's strong. He's going to be great in the NFL. I don't think he's there. And this is a question I want to put past Chris Trapasso, because could he be the rare top 10 running back? Since 2015, Tim, here's the list, okay, of running backs that have gone in the top 10, a position that has been completely devalued. Now, the best of the bunch, you would say Saquon Barkley going number 2 overall. Christian McCaffrey 8th overall to the Panthers. Now, noteworthy that as great as they are, they're not with their original teams. Okay? They've moved on. Next on the list, and I'm going to put, because he burned brightly, Todd Gurley at one point was the best in the game.
He was.
Yeah. So Todd Gurley went 10th overall in 2015. You have Zeke Elliott 4th overall in 2016. Same thing. Zeke at the beginning was better. He was a workhorse.
Well, that's why they don't go that high now, because they've got a small window.
Right. And then, Leonard Fournette, no. And Bijan Robinson, all right, too soon to tell. Yeah. It's only 6 guys in the last 10 drafts, okay, that have gone top 10 at the running back position. Do we get another one?
Yeah.
And with the Jaguars being the team that everybody is laser focused on here, would that help jumpstart their offense? And I'm thinking, although it's not, the regime is completely different since when they drafted Fournette, it is still the same owner. I think he could be sold on the fact, because the first round pick, particularly a top 10 pick, the owner needs to check off. I could see Genty easily going to the Jags at 5.
I've got him at 6, so to the Raiders. But yeah, 5 is feasible. I mean, when you're drafting that high, you have a lot of needs, and typically the best way out of it is to draft the best player available. If that's a running back, you draft him, especially if you are a running back needy team. You don't pick based on need and only need. If a guy like Genty is there and you know what he projects as, that's a top 5 pick. Then you take it. If he's still there at 6, 7, 12, you take him. Like you aren't gonna have to pay him that second contract unless he earns it. And you need the running back position. All these teams, the Raiders need a running back, the Cowboys need a running back, the Jaguars need just about everything except for a quarterback.
All those teams need multiple
Right.
things. Like that's the one that's glitzy that would get fans excited, and I still think that matters a little bit in Jacksonville. We will ask the expert coming up, Chris Trapasso, CBS Sports, joining us here on the show. You also hear his work on One Bills Live. Time on the other side for your calls at 866-4FAN, 866-4326. Mike Danger is in New Orleans today. My name is Gene Battaglia with Tim Schneider here on The Fan, Rochester.
Upgrade. Tell your smart speaker to play 95.7 The Fan and let your appliances know who's the real MVP. The Fan Rochester Sports Update.
Welcome to the week of the NFL Draft. The Buffalo Bills picking at 30 coming up Thursday night. Steve Tasker today on One Bills Live on the overall goal for the Bills in this draft.
So this draft, you say what you want out of it. I don't. If you can get a couple of starters out of it, contributors. If we get two guys that like line up on day one, opening day, it's a home run on this roster because it's hard to make, let alone start above the guys that are already there.
Chris Trapasso, CBS Sports, joining us next. We'll talk some NFL draft right here in the Sports Bar. Yankees in Cleveland tonight. The Mets hosting the Phillies. The Rochester Red Wings opening a series in Buffalo tomorrow. We did have one final today. Patriots Day in Boston. The Red Sox over the White Sox 4-2. Of course, the Boston Marathon. Joey Whalen in Rochester, 20th overall in the Boston Marathon. Gene Battaglia, The Fan Rochester.
Top Shelf Sports Talk. You're hanging out in the Sports Bar with Danger and Battaglia on the Sports Leader, 95.7 FM and AM 950, The Fan, Rochester.
I love one of the best in this industry is right in our backyard. You hear him from time to time on One Bills Live. And certainly read his work, get all prepped up. Chris Trapasso, CBS Sports, coming back into the Sports Bar. And Chris, appreciate your time this week. What is this time of year like for you, bud?
Gene, it is one of the most fun weeks of the year. I feel more alive this week. And it's kind of like we're talking about the Boston Marathon. It feels like I can see the finish line. Yeah. And after it's done, there's so much relief because there's no more speculation. And I could come on this show, talk with you guys, and write about actual draft classes and players picked by all these teams.
So, Chris, I figured I'd ask you some big picture type of questions, and then we can zero in on what the Bills should do, might do, all those things. When we're looking at some of these prospects in terms of the variance, if you told me, hey, Shedeur Sanders is going to go in the top 3, or we might get to the end of the first round, I can't believe Pittsburgh passed on him, that would be one in my mind. Does he fit that category? What players in your mind could you see that big variance here in the round 1 or this draft overall?
Yeah, I think Shedeur Sanders is probably the headliner with that because it doesn't feel like he's going to be the 3rd overall pick, but he could go 7 to the Jets. They could be hiding their interest in him a lot. He could go 9 to the Saints, or like you're mentioning, all the way to the Steelers, or maybe the Steelers are like, hey, look, we like someone else, Jackson Dart, Jalen Milroe later, or Mike Tomlin is just cool with Mason Rudolph as his starter and will feel like he can get 9 to 10 wins out of Mason Rudolph and a strong defense with, added pieces on the offensive side, chief among them DK Metcalf. So he would be up there. I think Michael Williams from Georgia, that he could be either a top 10 pick because of his traits and the pedigree coming from Georgia, or he can be not even picked in the first round. He could be an early second rounder because the production was not there. And then it's maybe a little bit of a segue to the Bills, which we can talk more big picture if you want, but also the cornerback position. After Travis Hunter, maybe Jahdae Barron from Texas, there is so much uncertainty with this cornerback class because of injury. Savon Revel from East Carolina, Benjamin Morrison from Notre Dame, Will Johnson from Michigan, that these players were not guys that played a full season in their final year that we saw them in college. They have first-round traits. At times they don't look like first-rounders, but we don't know how teams will view them from a physical perspective and how much their injuries are going to impact them in their rookie seasons.
I'm looking at what the Bills might do in this draft, and the idea, Chris, that we haven't had a single trade yet. And usually those are kind of motivated by, hey, we need a quarterback. We need to move up here. And I'm just wondering, maybe, do you expect a quarterback maybe to go at the end of the first round? And could the Buffalo Bills therefore be in play to trade down perhaps?
Yeah, hey, I think it's good to talk about all the different possibilities because for the last couple of weeks and months, it's all been, oh, hey, the Bills are going to move up. They have 10 picks. They're picking at 30. And I think that's certainly on the table. But for as much as Brandon Beane has traded up, Kyer Elam, Dalton Kincaid, he's also traded back a bunch too. He traded back twice before he picked James Cook in 2022. Obviously, last year traded back twice, all the way out of the first round completely. I do think that on Thursday night there will be a second quarterback and maybe even a third quarterback picked in the first round, and it will come via trade just because of the dynamics and where some of these teams that are quarterback needy are ultimately selecting. I don't know if we're going to see 2 or 3 quarterbacks in the top 10. Almost assuredly that will not be the case. But after that, teams moving up from the top of the second round into the first round, I think the Bills will at least field some calls at pick 30, and Brandon Beane will not be just – again, based on his history, afraid to ultimately trade back if he doesn't like how the board sits and he gets a good enough offer.
Yeah, Chris, you are the expert in this field because not only do you cover the draft, but you cover the Buffalo Bills. You know what's going on with this team. You have maybe Walter Nolan, but I highly doubt he'd be there. You'd have to move up. Who would actually be the best fit, in your opinion, if the Bills, whether it's pick 30 or you got to move up or maybe move back, who's the best fit?
Well, that's a really good question. It's one of the ultimate questions for the Bills in this first round. I think if the Bills love what they got from Daquan Jones, my comparison for Derek Harmon is actually Daquan Jones. They're similarly tall. They have a similar body frame. They're good run, a great fit. But in terms of just the prototype for what they have liked to have next to Ed Oliver, a bigger body that is really athletic, that would be Kenneth Grant. I mean, I don't think they need 320 plus. I just think they need a bigger body who can generate some pocket push next to Ed Oliver. And Kenneth Grant, at only 21 years old, showed those flashes as a pass rusher and is an NFL-ready run defender. Does not move like he's 6'3" and 330 plus pounds. I think the Bills would love to develop him next to Ed Oliver on this defense.
What are the odds that he's going to be there at 30, Chris?
That's a great follow-up. I think pretty low. I would say 20 to 30% chance, because even though this is such a deep and even at the top high-quality defensive tackle class, Kenneth Grant kind of stands out at that size. That Walter Nolan is right around 300 pounds. Derek Harmon, 305, 310. I love T.J. Sanders from South Carolina. The Bills brought him in for a visit. More day 2 guy, around 290 pounds. Just being bigger and having a more of an NFL-ready frame and kind of a nose tackle size, I think makes Kenneth Grant so unique that I would be reasonably surprised if he's available at 30. Now, that doesn't mean that he could be – that I don't think he's going to be available at 24 or 26 or 28, where a small trade-up could be in order for Brandon Beane to ultimately get Kenneth Grant on this defense.
Chris Passo, you hear him on One Bills Live occasionally, also CBS Sports. Chris, now before I ask you who would be a fit at the corner position, I think it's kind of I think it's interesting to explore what went wrong, what lessons can Brandon Beane and his staff learn from Kyer Elam so that you don't make the same mistake here when you're selecting. And again, the disclaimer here, well, you picked Christian Benford, it all worked out okay, but the last time the Bills selected a corner this high, it went completely wrong.
Yeah, that's also a good question, and it's something that I can't say that I was going to foresee, or I did foresee that Kyer Elam was going to be as disappointing as he ultimately was in Buffalo. But when they picked him in 22, I was probably on this show because I know that I said it repeatedly and I wrote it. I thought that then was the signaling of the Bills trying to play more man coverage and have Tre'Davious White on the opposite side playing zone, other side of the field mixing coverages, Kyer Elam playing aggressive press man. That ultimately wasn't the case. They still tried to play a lot of zone. Kyer Elam did not have the feel for it. And what's fascinating to bring this full circle is that down the stretch in the playoffs, AFC title game, the Bills were running more man than they ever have in the Sean McDermott era. They bring in Ryan Nielsen, the former defensive coordinator in Atlanta and Jacksonville, who has a history of playing a lot of man coverage and being very aggressive as a blitzer. Now, he's not calling the plays on defense, but he's part of the staff. So I think the specific lesson to learn from Kyer Elam is, sure, it's good to have corners that can play zone, can play man. You want that versatility or that flexibility in coverage. The problem with Elam was that at Florida, at over 6 foot and over 200 pounds, he tried to beat up wide receivers at the line, and he suffocated them. Even in the SEC, was really good at doing that. But beyond that, if he wasn't able to win at the line with his physicality, he had a lot of problems mirroring wide receivers. So I think the Bills will probably still lean toward those instinctive zone corners, but if you're going to draft someone with a man coverage specialty, you have to watch them follow and mirror routes down the field. It's not all about just winning in press at the line of scrimmage.
Chris, a question here before we explore who the Bills may draft. Maybe it's a follow-up, too. The moves from not just last week, but you also brought in Dane Jackson in Buffalo, Tre'Davious White coming back. Does it give the Bills another option if the board doesn't come that way? In other words, if we get to Friday night and like, oh my gosh, they didn't draft a corner, would that surprise you?
I don't think so. I think the low-hanging fruit is, hey, bringing in Dane Jackson and Tre'Davious White. That does not change the Bills' philosophies or strategy in this draft, or priorities, I should say, in this draft at corner. I think it does a little bit. I think the reason that we saw those moves happen well beyond the start of free agency and very close to the draft was that the Bills didn't want to get backed into a corner, no pun intended, like they did in 2022, where everyone knew that they had to pick a corner opposite Tre'Davious White in that draft. I think now, with two players that they have seen in the scheme, they've seen make plays. Now, Tre'Davious White's probably not going to be all-pro caliber anymore, but because they have those floor setters at the cornerback position, I'm not going to say that it's not a need, but I think it just will allow Brandon Beane a little bit more of a stress-free night on Thursday and Friday in case the board doesn't fall how he likes it, where he won't feel compelled to reach at the cornerback position, knowing that beyond the newly extended Christian Benford, they have two players that they know what they can get from in terms of playing within the scheme and making plays in Bobby Babich and Sean McDermott's defense.
Yeah, I mean, we're familiar with some of the names, seeing what you might think would be the best fit here in Buffalo. Trey Amos from Ole Miss. You've got Ravel from East Carolina. Who are some of the names, particularly in round 2, if the Buffalo Bills are going to make a move at the corner position, Chris?
Yeah, those two would probably be the most compelling and the most that fans and listeners have probably read and seen in a lot of those mock drafts. I don't think stylistically Trey Amos is exactly like Tre'Davious White, but he's similar in that he's an SEC corner. The ball production was there. Pretty solid tester across the board. Nothing spectacular about his draft profile, but there's no major red flags or reasons to be concerned. So I think he feels very Billsy and that he's an older prospect like Trey White was, experienced. You know what you're getting from him. To me, what I think would be interesting is someone like a Ravel from East Carolina, 6'2", almost 200 pounds, crazy long arms, big-time production at East Carolina before he got injured. He would maybe represent a higher ceiling than the Bills have really ever had because of the athleticism in this room. I think Benjamin Morrison from Notre Dame is a very similar case that talk about being able to follow in man coverage. He can be on an island, doesn't have to touch the wide receiver, and he is in the hip pocket routinely until the catch point, and then he makes a lot of plays on the football. So those two in the second round would make a lot of sense. The other name that I'll throw out there is Darian Porter from Iowa State. The tackling concerns have been talked about a lot during the pre-draft process, but he's another one that would represent a new ceiling, a higher ceiling than the Bills have ever had at cornerback. He ran in the low 4.3s. He's 6'2", about 200 pounds, long, 33-inch arms, and as a former wide receiver, has those ball skills that I think the Bills really want as one of those defenses that is routinely at the top of the league in creating turnovers.
Chris, the wide receiver position, this is what we were talking about this time last year, right? And Keon Coleman, and certainly we'll see how he takes a step from year 1 to year 2. But I think a lot of us are expecting, whether that's day 1, day 2, day 3, you're gonna need to fortify that position. Is it a speed guy you think that would be the best complement here to everything else going on? Or are you looking, Mac Hollins did have this kind of physical role, and kind of what do you think would be the best option if you're just looking at it from a trait standpoint for the wide receivers?
In terms of likelihood to be picked by the Bills, just based on their visits, because they brought in so many speedsters that ran in the low 4.3s at the combine, that the wide receiver position was actually the position that the Bills brought in most in terms of pre-draft visitors, which I thought was really fascinating. Not deep tackle, not corner. So if I were to bet what type of player will they pick, it would probably be middle of the draft, not a complete wide receiver, but can just take the lid off the defense at 22 or 23 years old. To answer your question specifically, I think they just need a well-rounded wide receiver to play on the outside, because to me, Josh Palmer can be that downfield threat. He's 25 years old, doesn't have the on-paper speed that you would like. He only ran 4.50 coming out of the draft out of Tennessee a few years ago, but has made a lot of big plays deep. So I think what defenses have seen from him at the NFL level, that he is a field stretcher, that's good enough for teams to have to game plan for that. Someone like a Jack Bash from TCU that can win with route running subtlety, great hands, and after the catch. We've seen, and I've said it on the show a million times, yards after the catch is so vital in today's NFL. And what did the Bills get from Khalil Shakir last season? He was the number 2 wide receiver in terms of total yards after the catch in a breakout year that led to his extension. So I think, like you're mentioning, someone that is a little bigger, Jack Bash is probably my favorite day 2 wide receiver out of TCU, that can be not just someone that's going to catch 2 passes for 60 yards and hit one big play. I think replenishing the wide receiver room with a legitimate outside wide receiver would make a lot of sense. I don't think it just has to be a pure speed guy.
Yeah, Chris, gosh, I'm old enough to remember when the draft began at noon on a Saturday.
Yep. Oh my God, me too. I loved it.
You would get to the end of round 3, and it would be late, and then everybody would come back the next day, and wisely they figured we should make something. But hey,
yeah, really.
Now I think, particularly in Western New York, everybody's dialed in on a Saturday. Like, what are the Bills going to do here in rounds 4 or 5? And there is one player I want to ask you about specifically here, that being Sean Dolak, the linebacker from UB. Where do you have him projected? And I would think that Bills fans would be very excited if he ended up in down in Orchard Park.
Yeah, I think he's going to get drafted. On film, I'll have to say I didn't think he was quite athletic enough or fast enough to get drafted, but everything that Sean Dolak does is teach tape for the linebacker position. Stacking and shedding blockers when those guards try to climb to the second level to combo block. He stacks and sheds them like he's an NFL veteran. We saw what he did in coverage, playing zone, playing man, making plays on the football, 2 pick sixes last season en route to being a first-team All-American, and he is such a reliable tackler. There's so many smaller, speedy linebackers that can get to the football today, but then they can't wrap up. Sean Dolak can do that. And then we saw at the UB Pro Day, ran it in the low 4.6s, which is plenty fast, and had a 35.5-inch vertical, which is right around what Matt Milano jumped in 2017 coming out of Boston College. So I don't think he's quite as explosive as Matt Milano, but there are other elements to his game that I just outlined that I do think 4th or 5th round would not be out of the realm of possibility. He reminds me a lot of Chris Borland, who had a short career in the NFL. He retired early. He was concerned about CTE and concussions out of Wisconsin. But early in his career for the 49ers, playing alongside Patrick Willis, he was a really good player that didn't have the physical attributes, but got to the football with his mind. And that's kind of the same vibes that I got from Sean Dolak. I really think he'll get drafted. And if not, he will ultimately, just like he did at UB, he will ultimately overachieve, make a roster, and we'll see him making plays in the NFL on Sundays.
Another topic that Danger's not here, but he and I disagree on. It's the running back position, and here's where I come down on this, because a lot of people are thinking, hey, this is a stacked draft here for running backs. You can get a guy in day 3, and I heard Maddie talking about that today, and it said, hey, that's all well and good, but when it comes to roster construction, can you actually afford to carry 4 running backs? You can't stash a guy. Like, I think Ty Johnson is great along with Ray Davis. The question is how long James Cook. But if the Bills were to draft somebody on day 2 here, what are your thoughts about the running back position moving forward overall with the Buffalo Bills, Chris?
So, yeah, that's kind of been my path with the running back position and as it's pertained to the Bills this pre-draft cycle too. Like, in watching all these running backs, I'm like, oh, man, that player's great. Oh, I love him on day 3. Oh, he would be great in the 5th or 6th round. But you're right in that in terms of bodies, the fact that the Bills are returning their entire running back room from last year, that was one of the deepest and best and most productive in the entire NFL behind this really good offensive line, it does feel somewhat unlikely that they would even pick one at all. And maybe Brandon Beane would just say, look, every year there's usually quality players available at that position later in the draft. So I do think, though, if it's day 2, certainly, but even if it's early day 3 with one of those 4th rounders or one of those 5th rounders, that would maybe indicate, I don't want to go out there and say that the Bills are going to instantly trade James Cook after that, but it would maybe signal that the Bills don't feel like they're anywhere close to being able to sign James Cook long term and want that contingency plan. But you're right, it would then turn into strictly a numbers game at that position because we know, they have a bunch of tight ends. They could even draft one of those 2 wide receivers. There's just not a lot of teams that carry 4 or 5 running backs on the active roster.
Chris, last one, and it's going to be something that I want, and I think our listeners would love, and they're back in mind when we get to Saturday. When it comes to rounds 4, 5, 6, the Bills right down don't have a 7th, but who are some of the guys in the later rounds that if the Bills were to grab them, you'd be very excited about?
Okay, so one name, C.J. Dupre from Alabama, and he's someone that I actually compared to Dawson Knox. He did not catch a lot of passes. He's a tight end from the Crimson Tide program. Didn't catch a lot of passes, just like Dawson Knox in the SEC. But there are times where he catches a drag route and hurdles someone, and then you see him stiff-arm somebody, or you see him bouncing off tacklers. The Bills want to add some depth there with Quentin Morris, their tight end 3 that's long been their tight end 3, still unsigned. They don't really have it. Zach Davidson right now would be their tight end 3. I think that would make a ton of sense. Braden Swinson is a name, edge rusher out of LSU that I really like. He did not have a long, productive career at LSU, but in his final season around the edge, the lights came on. The pressure rate was significantly better. The pressures went up. The bend, the pass rush moves, the power, it all kind of came together in his final season. And even after bringing in Joey Bosa, Michael Hoyt on the suspension, I wouldn't be surprised if the Bills ultimately do try to add an edge rusher. And the last name, we talked about wide receivers, well-roundedness. That's more of where I think the Bills should target. Elijah Badger from Florida is probably my favorite sleeper wide receiver in this draft class. I don't know if the Bills are going to pick him. He only ran 4.43, which is, to me, pretty fast. His game and his style on the field, how he runs, the way he plucks the football away from his frame, and how great he was after the catch at Arizona State and Florida reminds me of Stephon Diggs. And I know that's a lofty comparison, but let's not forget, Stephon Diggs was a 5th-round pick out of Maryland. He was not a highly touted prospect. Similar size, similar movement skills. I don't know if the route running ability is quite as good as Diggs, but it took Diggs a few seasons to become an elite route runner that he probably still is today. So Elijah Badger would be a name. Just follow him if he's picked by the Bills. If not, I thought he was sensational on film and is not getting enough love in this pre-draft process.
All right, everybody got that. Badger, Swinson, and Dupre. We will check back after the draft. Chris, as we're all getting ready, tell everybody about the content that you're providing at CBS Sports.
So I just dropped my final big board today. That's my top 286 players. I know it's a random number, but that's just as many players as I could get to in this pre-draft process. Have a few more articles coming out, and then I will be doing the live CBS draft tracker second round and all the way through round 5 this year. I'm going to hand it off for round 6 and round 7 to one of my colleagues. But all of the picks in real time, a grade, an evaluation, that's like my favorite final project, truly, during the draft. So all that on CBS Sports. Thanks, Gene.
Chris, fantastic work as always. Love that you hear you from time to time also filling in for Tasker Brownie. Thanks for the time today, and we'll be checking it out coming up Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. Thanks, Chris.
I always love coming on with you guys, so really appreciate it.
Thanks, Chris. Chris Trapasso,
thanks, Gene.
One of the best in the business, joining us here. And by the way, like our tradition here in the sports bar, we have St. John Fisher Lacrosse Senior Day, 2:00 on Saturday. But Tim will open up the mic this year and tell us who the Bills draft. Can you imagine if the Bills drafted one of those guys that Chris Trapasso just mentioned?
I mean, it would be a credit to his way. He puts the work in. He's probably going to get a bunch of those later round picks correct, and that's tough to do. Like mock drafts it's an impossible exercise because as soon as you get one incorrect, the whole thing changes, and it's thankless work that we thank him for. So he's a good guy.
I will admit I'm not moving the goalposts. I just changed opinion. You're allowed to do that. This is sports, okay? I'm not running anything seriously, okay? I said, what, a month or two ago, I thought that, okay, James Cook be traded by the draft or in draft night or something like that. I think that's far-fetched. I think that, okay, James, ball out this year, and then you're a free agent. Congratulations. With that being said, you cannot carry 4 running backs on a roster. Like, your 4th running back, the guy you draft, if he's any good, will get picked off by another team. So that's why I think that for anybody that says, oh, this is the year to draft James Cook's replacement, I don't think it is, Tim.
You can do it if you plan to move on from James Cook at the same time. So if they're going to hold on to James Cook and he's going to play, then yeah, you probably just go with what you've got with Ray Davis and Ty Johnson. And that's fine because Josh Allen is also kind of RB1 on top of being QB1 when it boils down to it. So, no, you don't need to necessarily draft the replacement for James Cook, but it might not be a bad idea to grab somebody in the 5th round if they plan on moving on from James Cook effective immediately.
Well, the draft is here, Tim. Yeah, let's talk a little bit about this more coming up next hour. We will talk a little more Bills talk. Our friend Nate Geary, Buffalo Bills Radio Network, will be joining us. We have time for your calls on the other side at 866-4FAN, 866-4326. It's the Sports Bar here on the Fan Rochester.
You're listening. W239BF Rochester, the sports leader. 95.7 FM and AM 950. The Fan, Rochester. An Odyssey sports station. The Fan, Rochester. Sports update.
It is draft week for the Buffalo Bills, picking number 30 overall. Coming up on Thursday night. Steve Tasker today on One Bills Live talking about Tre'Davious White. Thinks he has some left in the tank.
And I think he does have some pretty good football in him. Certainly he's going to play better for Buffalo than he has any place else. That's just the way it kind of works. That's what I'm counting on. Trey gives you some credibility. You know, even if he's not the same player, he gives you credibility at the position, right? So now, how does that change things? I don't know.
We'll talk to Nate Gary, Buffalo Bills Radio Network. That's coming up later this hour here in the Sports Bar. Today, the Boston Marathon. How about this? Rochester's Joey Whalen tore it up. 20th overall. 2 hours, 12 minutes, and 16 seconds. Red Sox over the White Sox 4-2. Yankees in Cleveland tonight. The Mets hosting the Phillies. Gene Battaglia, the sports leader. 95.7 FM and AM 950. The Fan, Rochester.
The Sports Bar with Danger and Battaglia.
My gosh, I'm just so excited. NFL Draft Week is here.
And then we start having the NFL vets start trickling in because they're going to get ready for camp to start.
We will hear from Josh Allen and Brandon Beane tomorrow.
Mike Danger.
When I say I'm on assignment, I am kind of on assignment. It's just not really on assignment for the Sports Bar.
Gene Battaglia.
Danger, you need coaching here, buddy.
Really, I need coaching.
Yes.
Says the guy who can't bet me a box of wine.
I would never pass up the opportunity to be on air with you.
Max Fried lost his no-hitter in the 8th inning after the official changed the call.
Duke star freshman Cooper Flagg, projected number 1 pick, is entering the NBA draft.
Of course, now the start of the playoffs.
NBA playoffs, NHL playoffs.
Amerks Crunch, Friday at 7.
Tune in for Game 1.
The Nighthawks also secured a spot in the NLL playoffs.
It's also Dingus Day. You could really get your groove on.
My dinner was cat food.
95.7 FM and AM 950, The Fan, Rochester.
How can I forget about that? That was like you dropped that on us as you were going out there. Oh, tell us your story there of losing bets there, and you ate cat food.
Yeah, that's they went on like a 5-game win streak after that, so maybe I've got to sprinkle that into my diet now. But
I would advise against that.
I thank you for the advice.
So, the voice you're hearing, that's terrible take, Timmy. Mike Dangerous, he likes to say, I'm on assignment. I'm busting his chops. He's in New Orleans. He's got a lot of responsibilities. He always kind of downplays it for our company. So, he's a manager here. So this is always kind of his creative outlet doing the show with us. Gosh, this will be our 9th draft show, Tim? My gosh, coming up. This is crazy that we've been doing this long. And Chris DePasso, who, my gosh, our very first one, it wasn't on draft day. It was the day before at Three Heads. And when he came out, he was fantastic. And to see his career take off the way that it has, and I think he said something interesting. Now, we played the soundbite about Tre'Davious White from Steve Tasker. The Bills today officially announcing this. Okay. Chris DePasso, it's low-hanging fruit to say this doesn't change the plans for the Buffalo Bills in the draft. He's right. It kind of does. You don't want to admit that, but the year that they drafted Kyrie Elam, you had to get a corner. If it gets to the end of round 2, I don't want anybody's head exploding or into round 3 that you got to go into. They don't have a 3rd-round pick. So you get to Saturday, Tim, and the Buffalo Bills haven't taken a corner. Well, Dane Jackson, Tre'Davious White, and whoever you're drafting rounds 4 or 5, have at it, gentlemen. Because to me, that wouldn't be that far-fetched.
No, I mean, adding players of Trey White's caliber is important to do for a team that, like the Bills. Like, you don't need anything other than guys at this point. And I say that kind of tongue-in-cheek, but you bring in average players and it boosts the rest of the room up. You've got 200 guys you're looking at to draft this weekend, and you've got a solid roster already. So you're just adding depth and building a roster that is better and better day by day. You're in a good spot right now.
Yeah, I at the very least, okay. I think what most of us would hope is, all right, I think if we had to go with what's the Bills chalk draft, it would be this. Kenneth Grant is the first pick. Maybe you move up a little bit, but let's just say for this at 30. Amos, the corner out of Ole Miss, and then you get the speediest wide receiver with the next pick. and then you're just picking best player on the board from there on out. I think that would be kind of the one where we'd all nod our head.
Yeah, you want to leave Thursday night satisfied, and if that means trading down and getting more picks to get more players, that's fine too. But yeah, you want to take the best player available at every position available. Like if the best player out there is not necessarily a position of need, you still want to add on the most talented players you can. I mean, you're not going to draft Jackson Dart if he's there and the best player available just because you don't need a quarterback. That is off limits. But everything else, you just stockpile. You build depth and you find ways to improve your roster with every single selection.
Yeah. Time for your calls this segment, 866-4326, 866-4FAN. As we could talk baseball if you like, and I think this is seeing the Yankees, seeing the Mets, seeing like the teams we all kind of care about. Even like, I guess it's so early, but let me just kind of point this out. We all know it's early, okay? But if your team, and my team, happens to sweep a team in a 4-game series for the first time since 1986, you don't think I'm not happy? See, that's the difference between me and some other sports fans. If Mike Danger would be like, he would be like shaming me, oh, it doesn't matter, it's early, it's April. No, it's kind of cool, and I can kind of enjoy this. I like the way my team is playing right now.
I mean, yeah, there is a whole lot of ball left, but why are you going to demean a win? Every single win matters at the end of the year. It doesn't matter if it's in April or October. 4 wins in a row against a decent team is important. If you're splitting that, you're not happy. You took all 4, and you should be happy.
Sunday night baseball used to be like I think a bigger thing. Maybe it was just kind of like you're growing up and I'm kind of getting into my 20s. Like, oh my gosh, it's John Miller and Joe Morgan. Like it was like the game, and now it's like since they moved to the. Yeah, it's just kind of on. But there was something that happened last time.
Yeah, I was going to say.
So if you're not familiar with Luis Arias, he is a magician, okay? Batting title with the Marlins, batting title with the Twins, batting title with the Padres.
Former Red Wing.
Yeah.
For like 2 weeks.
Yeah, for 2 weeks. So, like, Luis Arias can certainly do that. And this is what's kind of weird. So he is laying down a bunt. And what happens with a bunt is, particularly when it goes to the right side, you get all these moving parts. So it's the pitcher, it's the first baseman kind of going in for the same ball. Well, who's covering first? It's the second baseman. Now, the second baseman may not know, or he should know, okay, I probably shouldn't be standing there, but the way the play kind of works is the second baseman, who happens to be Mauricio Dubon of the Astros, goes over right, and Arias, you know how they say in hockey, don't have your head down? He's chugging the first, just trying to beat this out. And he doesn't realize Dubon is basically blocking the bag, which he shouldn't be doing. But
the momentum took him over there.
Yeah,
from where he was.
Right. So it's such a bang play, but because Arias wasn't looking, he gets knocked out cold. And when you watch this video, it's like nobody knows what to do. He's laying on the ground. He's completely knocked out. And you're watching this in real time like, oh, my gosh, did he break his neck? He's not doing anything. So what does Dubon do? In the first, he rolls him over. I'm like, no.
that was
don't
terrifying.
Do that. It was like, don't do that.
The manager ran, the base coach kind of knelt down and just to like check on him. But there was nothing, so you can't really do anything.
Where are the trainers? The trainers should be sprinting out there and then like, hey, are you okay, bud? And then you roll him over. No, don't do that, dude. Well, the good news is he was released from the hospital. He's back with the Padres. I don't know when he's going to be back in the lineup, but hey, talk about teams that are off to good starts. I mean, you look at the standings in the NL West. It's not what we kind of expected. We all expected the Dodgers would go wire to wire. That's not going to be the case. It's actually the Padres with the best record in baseball at 16-6. Dodgers are a half game back now,
though. That division is incredible, and it's pretty hilarious to be the Colorado Rockies because they might be pushing White Sox numbers this year.
Yeah,
and that whole division is good. Like you can possibly they're going to beat up on each other, so their records are going to dwindle a little bit. But all 4 of those are reasonable playoff teams there, and then the Rockies shooting for 40 wins.
Well, weren't the Rockies at least the team that they were going to entertain you and have a lineup, and there would be guys like Todd Helton and guys that you could you'll rely on for your fantasy team, or in this day and age, just your daily fantasy or whatever it is. And now
they've got a good shortstop in Ezekiel Tovar, and that's about it.
That's it.
They've never had any pitching. They've got one of the better pitching prospects just came up, Chase Dollander, but they have no hope and no promise. So they're in the most competitive division in the sport. So it's a bad spot for them.
Are they going to be the new White Sox? As bad as that is, like the White Sox are only a half game ahead of them. I mean, the White Sox are doing what they were doing last year.
The White Sox have more than half of their wins this year against the Red Sox, which is adorable because the Red Sox are actually somewhat competent.
Yeah, they took what? The Boston took 3 of 4 from the White Sox, including this morning. That always throws me off, the 11 a.m. game there. So,
and they played earlier this year as well, and Chicago took 2 out of 3. Chicago has 5 wins. 3 of them are against the White Sox.
That's crazy. Yeah. So we could talk about baseball if you like. I missed this last night, but I got a couple people mentioning this. I wanted to sit down and watch Maple Leafs Sens, but you get busy as an adult and you can't watch things in real time sometimes. And I guess they were mentioning Chris Tanev and talking about Wayne Wilson and the new head coach at RIT last night and everything. Tim, did you get to take in any playoff action?
I watched that game and the 10 o'clock the Vegas game, but I did it without sound, so I did not hear that. I did see the scrum at the end of the game where Tanev was involved, and I like how that series might play out based on the hate that was provided in the third period there. Once the game was in the hands of the Maple Leafs, it got a little chippy, and playoff hockey, it's what I live for. So sign me up for a 6 overtime game with 200 penalty minutes, and I'll sit through the entire thing.
So you get 4 games tonight, including series that are just starting. So it's kind of strange, right? The Caps, top seed in the East, they're only starting tonight. I don't know if that was an arena thing or whatever, but Montreal is at Washington for Game 1. Also Game 1 tonight, 10 o'clock on ESPN2. These two teams never meet in the postseason, the Oilers and Kings. I'm just surprised that they're meeting once again. This feels like the year to me. You tell me. So Danger, he had his bold prediction saying the Maple Leafs are going to win the Cup. I'm like, you realize that hasn't happened in our lifetime? And I'm talking about like my lifetime. Like for a lot of us, 67 is the last time that happened. My take is that you're just going to have some like weird pairing. It just doesn't seem to me that any of these teams, like Winnipeg is pretty much the backbone is the goaltender, right?
Right, yeah.
So like would it surprise anybody if you ended up with a Carolina-Dallas final rather than we're all expecting like top teams in each.
It's funny that you say that because for the third year in a row, my bracket is Carolina over Dallas in the Stanley Cup. But it's so crazy, playoff hockey. So both those teams could be done in a week and a half, or both of them could be playing into July. So
what you need a storyline to get people to tune in, and the storyline was a few things, right? When it came to the fight, what was going on in the world, the 4 nations, that was special, and then was over real quick. Last year, I thought the Stanley Cup final was very interesting because, hey, America, you've heard about this guy playing way up there. It's not the UConn, but close enough up in Edmonton. Connor McDavid, here we are, and he's going to take on Florida. And, well, he played McDavid that whole entire third period, that Game 7. But, Tim, I think you need star power. If we end up with a Carolina-Dallas, give me something. Give me like Edmonton-Washington. Or barring that, give me a storyline of, all right, here are the Maple Leafs trying to get this done. That city would go absolutely crazy.
It's been a long time since a Canadian team won, so I wouldn't be opposed to. I mean, it would. I kind of like it not being a thing for 35 years or whatever it was since the Canadians won, but
93.
Yeah.
Gretzky was the opposing team.
Right.
That was crazy.
I would sign up for an Edmonton-Toronto Stanley Cup final. That would be fun. You've got star power there with Austin Matthews and Connor McDavid, and that brings back the 4 nation stuff and how Matthews should have scored 3 different times in the overtime, and then Connor McDavid showed just how better he was than literally everybody else and actually got it done.
That would be interesting. Like if we had not a team from the States, how would that play?
The NHL, I think, would love it. The American public would just
You
basketball
and
instead.
you and I would love it.
Yeah, it'd be. It's good hockey.
Yeah, good
Sign
hockey.
me up.
Yeah.
But the casual sports fan that is watching hockey in June probably isn't very invested in.
But see, what do I care about the Florida Panthers, though? To me, that's
Fair.
like another outpost city that, all right, great, they're getting a cup too. Count all the markets that got a cup before Buffalo. Vegas, Raleigh, North Carolina, Sunrise, Florida, not to mention Tampa. Gallows humor.
There's a lot of work to be done in Buffalo, but in the meantime, I'll enjoy some playoff hockey that does not involve them again.
NBA tonight, we get the Knicks. And to me, the NBA first round doesn't feel anything comparatively speaking to the NHL first round. You've got the Knicks hosting Detroit tonight. You've got Denver hosting the Clippers. Denver, the Knicks. It seems like this always goes. Now, the Lakers lost to Minnesota. Ooh, but should that really surprise anybody? Like a 3-6 matchup that could have gone the other way. Golden State, I picked Houston, but I'm not surprised Golden State won. But to me, you're not getting those rich upsets in the NBA first round that you would get in the NHL.
Every single game one was a double-digit result. The closest game, I think, was the last one last night. Golden State beat
Houston,
the Rockets 95-85. That was the closest game. And outside of that and Minnesota, all the home teams won comfortably. Oklahoma City beat Memphis by 51 points.
51 points. That's the sixth time that's happened in NBA history. We should just skip it.
Right.
You
Top
should
six
be
in. Forget the play-in round. Get rid of it.
Yeah,
top six.
Yeah, that's not going to happen, Tim. But
correct, but
it's but for Memphis,
where we are.
Yeah, Memphis, you should be ashamed.
51 point, and that's with Oklahoma City didn't try in the fourth quarter. They had 120 something points after 3, and still won the quarter, and they only scored 19. A 51 point result in a playoffs. So by definition, a championship contender, by getting into the playoffs, just lost a game by 51 points, and then they've got to go do this 3 more times.
You can always give us a call on the Good Smoke Barbecue and Pub Wingman line, 866-4FAN. Award-winning barbecue from Good Smoke Barbecue and Pub. It's 135 West Commercial Street, East Rochester, goodsmokebbq.com. On that Good Smoke Barbecue and Pub Wingman line, we will be talking to our buddy Nate Geary, WGR, and the Buffalo Bills Radio Network. The options for the Buffalo Bills on the draft, and Nate does. I'm sure he's going to be putting in some long hours coming up this weekend as well. Time for your calls on the other side of that. My name is Gene Battaglia with Tim Schneider today here on the Fan Rochester.
update.
Welcome to Draft Week. The Buffalo Bills Thursday night, picking at 30. That's if they stay there. Steve Tasker today on One Bills Live, talking about the overall goal for Buffalo.
So this draft, you say what you want out of it. If you can get a couple of starters out of it, contributors. If we get two guys that like line up on day one, opening day, it's a home run on this roster because it's hard to make, let alone start above the guys that are already there.
Nate Geary, WGR, the Buffalo Bills radio network. He'll be anchoring all weekend. He will join us next year in the sports bar. Some Rochester pride today at the Boston Marathon. Our own Joey Whalen, 20th overall, 2 hours, 12 minutes, 16 seconds. Red Sox over the White Sox on the Patriots Day game, 4-2. Yankees in Cleveland tonight. The Mets host the Phillies. Gene Battaglin, the sports leader, 95.7 FM and AM 950, The Fan, Rochester.
The beer is cold and the wings are hot. You're in the sports bar with Danger and Battaglia on the sports leader, 95.7 FM and AM 950 The Fan, Rochester.
Always love the chance to catch up with Nate Geary, Buffalo Bills Radio Network, WGR, and boy, I can only imagine how many hours you're putting in. Nate, I'm hoping for your sake maybe a trade up for the Bills on Thursday night, and that way you have something to talk about rather than what happened last year. Nate, how are you today?
I'm well. If you are looking for me to give you just a little glimpse into like, hey, what is it like for a guy that's got to, host 15 hours of draft coverage? Today I finished my own draft guide. It's not all of my information, but, I compile information from, Dane Brugler, The Athletic, and Eric Edholm, NFL.com, a couple other pieces, right? And I kind of bring them into my own, so I get more of a consensus top 100 board plus, top 15 to top 40, depending on how big the position is at every position. And then you just get ready to talk about it over the next couple of days. So I'm excited, looking forward to it. It feels like forever since the last whistle of the 2024-25 season. But here we are. Yeah, it'll be interesting for me in that a year like this, last year, obviously we waited, traded back again. I don't know that I need it to, need another result. I might tell you this might be the real year to trade back one or two times. But overall, I'm looking forward to it, and I would tell you a trade up would be nice, but there's no Brian Thomas Jr. in this draft, so I don't know how excited I am to move up in this one.
Yeah, what happened with Brandon Beane's plan at defensive tackle there? Does that lead you to a conclusion that it's more probable than not that the Buffalo Bills will be spending a high pick here at that position just to make sure that they have enough bodies there to begin the season, Nate?
Yeah, I think one of the first two picks, right, either 30 or 56, make a ton of sense for defensive tackle. Some notes today about Oregon's Derek Harmon, about him potentially sliding in the draft due to a medical concern. He's been a name I know a lot of Bills fans have been eyeing. I don't know that I love the fit for a player like that. I think this is really where a conversation about, who do you take at 30? Is it defensive tackle or is it cornerback? And I think to answer that question specifically, I know you didn't ask it, but I feel like this is sort of the question at hand. It's like, well, which position group do you take first? And I think really what that question's asking is, which do you think you can get the value at 56, where you feel like the one position you got to take at 30, maybe you're not getting as high of a quality player at 56 or 62 if you decide to wait on one of those positions. For me, the signing of Tre'Davious White last week, and then, Dane Jackson a couple of weeks ago, that a couple of people, some fans might look at that and say, well, I think they, worst case scenario, have figured out the quarterback room. But to me, it's just Brandon Beane making sure that he's not maybe forced into making a decision based on bodies at a specific group, right? Do I think Larry Ogunjobi is, going to walk in here and start pressing, guys like Daquan Jones or Ed Oliver starter at defensive tackle? I think they need more bodies at the one technique position. But I think you can find guys, throughout this draft. I think the real athletic potential blue chip players are at the cornerback position. Whether it's, Maxwell Harrison from Kentucky, a guy I like a lot, 6'2", long arms, ran in the low 4.3s. Shemar Ravel from East Carolina is another name I like. Again, I just think you have the potential of getting a true blue chip talent at 30 at corner, where maybe you're getting a guy that can be a very good to serviceable starting defensive tackle at 30. To me, get the guy with the
actually pick 23. Looking back at that, what could you learn? And you brought up, hey, setting the floor here with Tre'Davious White and Dane Jackson. Was that just a case of, oh my gosh, coming from a position that you have to draft by need and that clouded their judgment?
Well, I think it's to me, it's more of an ideology concern than it truly is maybe a philosophical one. And what I mean by that is their ideology at corner has been, well, they can get away with having, Levi Wallace. They can get away with having Dane Jackson and some of these maybe B level, just kind of your average starting level or just below average starting replacement level player at corner. When I think in reality, the year they're going after Kyer Elam is the hope is that you're now marrying him with a, all-pro player in Tre'Davious White. It wasn't, hey, we really need another starter. It's, we want two good starters. So they gave you a little sneak peek into what they wanted, which was they wanted two trustworthy high-level corners and not to continue on the same path that they've been on, which is, we'll have one really great corner and we'll throw a guy out there, right? I don't think that's what they wanted to do. So I think that pick ideologically was we're ready to have two lockdown corners. The philosophical part that I just don't think married with that was, well, we're so good at developing this position. Look what we're able to do with Josh Norman. Look what we're able to do with Levi Wallace. Then he goes to Pittsburgh, basically never to be heard from again. Dane Jackson, serviceable starter, goes to Carolina, and he's back a year later, right? Well, we can draft the guy with the traits. We'll teach him how to play zone coverage. We feel, he's a, jam at the line of scrimmage, physicality at the line of scrimmage, and an A-plus athlete. The concerns about, coverage and trail technique and man, and then, the stuff in zone coverage, we'll teach him that. And I think they got burned big time on that. I don't think that type of player at 30 will be the selection for the Bills. If they've got a run on corners, I do think the Bills are going to be very comfortable saying, all right, we're not going to press it. We'll take that defensive tackle. Hey, maybe then wide receiver comes into the conversation at 30 if, their top 3 or 4 corners and they're not going to stretch for one. To me, I look at it and say there really isn't the Kyer Elam type within the top 5 of the group. And what I mean by that is there's not the guy that you'd look at and say, well, this guy really excelled at, one thing that maybe not be the thing we really value in Buffalo, which is, being able to drop into cover 4, cover 2, cover 3, and be that instinctual cover corner in zone like you had in Rasul Douglas, right? I think it's the perfect example of that guy. The thing is, they bring in, and again, people have told me the name, I'm going to forget it 100 times. The defensive coordinator from Atlanta, the Bills brought in as a defensive assistant, comes in with a pedigree of blitz and man coverage. Well, to me, they created, I think they made one move with that in mind in Michael Hoyt, right? They bring a guy that they can disguise, line up all over the line of scrimmage, and then maybe stand up on third down and be that extra rusher. I think that they're going to marry that concept with a guy that can play both man and zone, but maybe not a guy that hasn't shown the ability to play both at a high enough level. Luckily, I think the top 5 guys in this class can play man, can play zone, and have examples on film of both, which I don't think you got with Kyer Elam coming out.
Ryan Nielsen, senior defensive
Ryan
assistant.
Nielsen.
Yep, that's
one of these days I'm going to remember that name.
Dude, it's April. We're okay. It's totally fine. Nobody should
wait till training camp.
Yeah, you should know every coach at this point here. We're talking to Nate Geary, Buffalo Bills Radio Network. Is the safety position that high a luxury pick, or could you see that improving the team right away? Somebody like Nick Emenwari, I'm okay, or your guy from Notre Dame there too. Honestly,
get me going.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think he'll be there at 30 there, but your thoughts on the safety position when the Bills will take a safety at some point, but at what point do they take a safety here?
Well, let's peek into the philosophy of what they originally brought Taylor Rapp in for, right? Part of it was they wanted to have a guy in waiting that understood the Sean McDermott, defensive scheme and be able to essentially take the reins from Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer. But if you remember, the thought going into that season is you were still going to have Hyde and Poyer. What Rapp was going to do was give you flexibility to play a third safety if you want. I think that still exists for them. I still think there is some desire to be able to run 3 safeties on the field. So I do think safety is an option for them. I think they like Cole Bishop, but there's no real proof State trust him yet. And, you know, I think that they put themselves in their first three picks. Keon Coleman, Cole Bishop, and Dwayne Carter. I don't know what they believe or think of any of those players. They don't want to get into that situation again. So, like, that, you know, and just as a side comment, like this conversation about them potentially taking a linebacker in the first round, I think is just idiotic because of that exact reason. I don't think you can go into 2026 and say, I don't know what you have in my first round pick because he couldn't get on the field. The Bills really need guys that can contribute right away. So for me, safety maybe fits into this hybrid or this tweener idea, which is a guy that can get onto the field in three safety, you know, looks. And I think they want to be able to do that and have the flexibility to do that. But I keep looking back at, you know, the Baltimore Ravens 3 years ago now, right? They take Kyle Hamilton, who, you know, I think because he was a safety, probably went higher than I thought he was one of the best, if not the best, raw athlete in the draft. It was just going to be, could a team find a position for him to be an every down player? I always thought that his versatility was his strength, and it almost was like his versatility was his weakness going into that draft. But the Baltimore Ravens didn't need a starting safety. They take Kyle Hamilton, and you figure it out from there. So for me, safety might be the one position at 30. I keep going back to this idea of trying to find a blue chip talent, somebody that can be one of the best players at their position. Safety might be one of those positions at 30. You could take a guy that has the ceiling of maybe the best player at his position in the NFL. And I don't think you're getting that at defensive tackle. Maybe you could get it at corner. But I think for me, I just kind of keep thinking of they're putting veterans in positions to give themselves an opportunity to say, we're just going to sit here and take the best available player if we can't move back, if we can't do this. And we're stuck at 30, and we don't love the cornerback class, and we don't love the defensive tackle class here at 30. We're not going to reach for a position of need. Instead, we're going to go for the best possible athlete, the player we have highest on our board. And I think that's why wide receiver could absolutely be in play at 30 as well.
Yeah, we're talking to Nate Geary, who will be anchoring the coverage on our sister station, WGR, which you can also hear, of course, in the Odyssey app, which is free to download. Nate, tomorrow we're going to hear from Brandon Beane. He's not going to tell you. This isn't the 1990s where John Butler would wink, wink, nod, nod, tell you who, or the cabbie by Chris Berman. But some of the actions for the Buffalo Bills in terms of who they're bringing in for top 30 visits. And look, I can't tell you which wide receiver is better, but I can tell you that it seems like they're bringing in a lot of guys with speed here. So at what point do you think the Buffalo Bills address this? And could that actually be, ironically, because we all expect the Bills to always be taking a receiver, and they did last year, but could that be on day one or day two here?
I think absolutely. Again, I think this scenario exists where, you know, there's a run on corners and defensive tackles, and they're looking there saying, you know, Luther Burden or, you know, Higgins from Iowa State, somebody they really, who knows if there's a fall with Ted McMillan, right? What if he gets to 25, 26, and the Bills decide that's the guy we're going to trade up for? So I think for me, wide receiver is an interesting position. I think 62 makes the most sense to address the wide receiver position. I have long said, I think for, you know, a month or so now, I think Kyle Williams is going to go much higher than projected, right? He's kind of projected right now a third or fourth round pick. I think it's very possible he's a late, you know, second round, early third round pick. If the Bills are sitting there at 62 saying, we have a third round grade on this guy, but man, we're looking around at, and that's in the position we want to address. We really like him. You know, that could be a player to me that the Bills really try to target. But I think there are a ton of guys in that fourth round area where you're talking about speed, physicality, the kid from TCU, Xavier Williams, the kid from Tennessee, Thornton. I mean, he's 6'5", 215, 220, and runs a 4.3. So there are those speed, you know, sort of boundary players available in this draft. I definitely would not sleep early. The guy that I just really am not, and I saw Evan Silva did his mock draft and had the Bills taking him at 30 is Luther Burden. And it's not to say that I don't think he's going to be a great player in the NFL. I actually think he'll be a really good one. I just think there's too much crossover between him and Khalil Shakir, and maybe that's what kept them away from drafting Ladd McConkey last year, which, you know, in hindsight was a huge mistake by the Bills. Yeah. So, you know, looking back at a pick like that is you don't want to look at Luther Burden and say, you know, he's a great player, but, you know, he reminds us too much of a guy we already have on the roster. I don't think that should sway you, but I just don't really see him as a true boundary receiver. And, you know, if you're asking me right now, am I going to take Khalil Shakir off the field for a first-round rookie? I want my answer to be no to that. I think, again, the thing we're going to start asking ourselves based on who they pick in the first 3 picks is what happens next with Keon Coleman if there is a wide receiver taken within the first 62 picks.
Yeah, I think it's also interesting that Josh Allen is going to speak to reporters tomorrow too, and I'd just be curious, like, how much input actually Josh has when it comes to this whole draft process, because it wouldn't surprise me at all if he's stepping into Brandon Beane's office and trying to pick his brain here a little bit.
Yeah, listen, I think that they should look for help on this offense. So, do I think 30's too high for receiver? No. But I do think that, they probably feel like they're in a position that if they don't get one, in the first 2, 3, 4 rounds, that they're fine going into the season with what they have. I would just think that'll tell you a lot about what they think of Keon Coleman. I think we're going to learn how the team, not that I don't feel they said it loud and clear. I think they're very concerned and not overly impressed with him. They said it as much, and nobody really asked, right? They really wanted to tell you they were disappointed with Keon Coleman. So, to me, that says something. But at the same time, I think we'll know more based on what the product of, 30, 56, 62 is. If one of those guys are a receiver, I don't know what that means for the future for Keon Coleman.
Yeah, that was, I don't want to say, it was rare for Sean McDermott at a season-ending press conference just to
super rare
go out of his way just to and that, it wasn't flippant. Correct? That's calculated. That is it.
Listen, have you heard them at any point be as critical of Kyer Elam as they were of Keon Coleman in that press conference? I can't remember one time where they were even close to as, I don't want to say aggressive, but just so transparent about the struggles that everyone's looking at Kyer Elam like he's a bust, and they're saying, well, he works hard, and there was more excuses made for him over a 3-year span than at any point during that press conference where both the GM and head coach in lockstep made a note. It was almost like they weren't even really asked about it. They wanted to let everybody know that they were disappointed with his first year.
Yeah. Nate, you played at Buff State. I want to ask you about the UB guy, Sean Dolak.
Yeah.
Where's he going? Could you see him as a Buffalo Bill?
I think he could be a 5th or 6th round pick. I know having talked to some people that, are drafts, specialists, right? I was talking to Chris Trapasso about this, talked to a couple of other people about this, is after the pro day, NFL GMs started reaching out to people at UB almost like they didn't really pay attention. Then the testing happened. And people are like, well, we better go back and watch the film of this kid. And, I know Brian Baldinger just posted something about him the other day. He's a football player. I think he'll get selected, especially in today's NFL. 4-5 at the linebacker position is going to be coveted. Coverage is coveted, but he's a football player. He's downhill, physical. I think he absolutely gets drafted. I think the Bills could be a team. They've been doing a lot of homework on linebacker. Dolak absolutely could be in the picture for the Bills.
So one of the offseason storylines, too, and we've talked to you about this before, certainly James Cook, and, I thought it was Brandon Beane interesting at the owners' meetings. It's like, nope, not going to discuss this until after the draft, which, all right. I mean, is there any chance? I suppose there's always a chance, right? But more than likely, we're seeing James Cook maybe going to his last year here. And correct me if I'm wrong on that, and balling out. Do you spend a late-round pick here? And if so, how do you house that guy here? What are your thoughts here about what the Bills may or may not do at the running back position, Nate?
I don't think you can, right? It just becomes a numbers game. If you're taking a guy in the 6th round, you got, 3 or 4 picks in the 6th round, maybe a 5th round flyer. What you're telling me then is he's basically not going to make it to team. Can you then find a guy to clear through waivers and get under your practice squad like they did with Frank Gore Jr. last year? Because you're not going to, potentially Ty Johnson's here, right? Like, he's not going anywhere. Are you going to expose Ray Davis to waivers? Because you think you can maybe get him through? I don't think so either. So from a pure numbers perspective, I just don't see how they do it. And I don't think that there's a trade worthwhile enough for a team like the Bills in the position they're in to actually move on from a player that, is going to probably walk off the bus with 1,000 yards rushing if he plays 17 games this year and, maybe 10 plus touchdowns. The Bills aren't going to part ways with that for a 3rd or 4th round pick, right? Unless it's, the guy that I'm interested in, if the rumors of, the Jaguars maybe being interested in Genty, is if a guy like the kid from Etienne, Travis Etienne.
Yeah.
If he becomes potentially available, could the Bills, because the Bills really like Etienne a lot, and it hasn't really worked out for him in Jacksonville. Maybe you swing something like that, but that's me projecting. I don't see a path for this team to use an asset on a running back at this point.
Nate, I'm going to give you my prediction for Thursday night and take it for what it's worth, and I'd be curious to get your prediction or in your mock. And I think you're not going to be happy at all with my prediction because you're going to be on the air, you're going to be talking about pick 30, and then the Bills are on the clock. And because you're going to have all these quarterback-hungry teams that passed on a quarterback, the Browns, the Giants, the Raiders, the Jets, whoever, the Saints, who knows? You're going to have a lot of teams that are going to be maybe looking to move up, and maybe it's not Buffalo. I think you're going to have a lot of movement at the end of the first round. I think the Bills will move back and fortify their position in rounds 2, maybe pick up an extra third rounder, who knows. And I think we're all going to be disappointed at the end of Thursday night just from that standpoint. But your prediction on what the Bills should do, what are the possibilities at pick 30?
I don't disagree with you. I think that could be a very real possibility. Listen, last year they did more moaning and complaining about the league screwing them over on that third-round pick last year. And what does it end up being? It ends up being the difference between their ability to move up to potentially get a Brian Thomas Jr. because they don't have that third-round pick to move up. I think they want the third-rounder. I think that they could absolutely get a deal for, let's say Jackson Dart. And I think the team is Joe Schoen in New York. They call Brandon Beane, say, you get to move back, 4 spots, 5 spots. 6 spots or whatever it is, and we'll give you a third-round pick. Man, that would just be really juicy. It'd be hard for me to say no to that.
So, Nate, I take it you're on Thursday night, you're on Friday night. So, for our listeners on Friday night, we got game 1 of the Amerks. I don't know if you know about playoff hockey. It's really cool here, what we have
What's
here.
That? What's that? What's that like? Yeah.
But the Odyssey app, so you could have 2 things working at once here. Nate, you're going to be anchoring. Tell us about, all the work that's ahead of you for this week.
7 to midnight on Thursday, 7 to midnight Friday, and then we will be up and early. I think there might be some additional local coverage before 11 a.m., but we get on air 11. We will go to the last Bills pick on Saturday, and then my summer begins if the weather holds up.
Yeah. Well, do you have any Rochester golf courses you're targeting this spring and summer?
Oh, of course. I mean, I'm a big fan of Ravenwood, one of my favorite courses in all of Western New York. Greystone's another favorite of ours, of the big group, the golf group we play. That's usually 1 or 2 times a year we're getting out there. So trust me, I'll be out in the Rochester area.
We got to get you to Eagleville, Wildwood. We'll see what we can do for you, Nate. Appreciate you.
I'm in. I'm in. My pleasure, buddy.
Nate, thanks, Nate, for the time. Nate Geary, Buffalo Bills Radio Network, who, again, everybody, this is the time of year. This is their Super Bowl here. What are some things we kind of learned today?
That there are a lot of draftable players in the NFL, and all of them would look good in Buffalo Bills jerseys.
That can be an overarching theme. I think the idea that the Buffalo Bills signing Tre'Davious White doesn't change anything. No. It gives you the idea that you don't have to take a corner. You take the corner when you're ready based on the value and based on that's the guy I want.
And that's always how it should be anyway.
That's how they fell into the trap with Kyrie Lim. To hear Nate kind of describe it like, well, he didn't play a lot of zone, but we can teach him that. Ooh, yeah, no. The guy you wanted was O.J. McDuffie, and the Chiefs nailed you. And rather than just say, you know what, trade down or pivot, you took the next guy on your board and you didn't think that through.
Yeah, that's tough to do.
Yeah.
Like, you can't get goaded into making a mistake, and that's what happened there. And you have to learn from that then, and then not repeat it. And I think that's what they're working towards now.
Wednesday on the show, I know Danger's not going to be happy with this. Binkley's coming back in.
Nice.
So if there's a team that has tortured the Buffalo Bills, okay, just by the fact that you've lost 3 playoff games, 4. I've lost count. 4 to the Chiefs, 2 in the AFC Championship game. But it's not only that, it's how you've gotten, there's been 3 instances now in the draft where, oh my gosh, okay, yeah, we gave you Patrick Mahomes. Yay. The O.J. McDuffie. And then, to me, last year being the glaring, you did what?
Right.
Now, we have to reserve judgment because if Dwayne Carter ends up being something special for the Buffalo Bills, that's the pick you got from Kansas City. But we don't like to do that. But the concern here I have, Tim, is, and I'm glad that Nate is talking about this, like the idea that Keon Coleman was called out by Sean McDermott in McDermott's season-ending press conference. Wow. It's going a little out of your way there. So, and why didn't they call out? Well, I can tell you why. It's because Kyrie Allen was doing everything he probably could do to get right, and it wasn't working, okay? Can you be mad at the student that puts in the effort but just isn't getting it?
No, you can be frustrated because you want more.
Like to me, that was Kyrie Allen.
If you're putting the work in and the results aren't there, it is what it is. If you're lazy or not putting in the effort that is expected of you, then there's repercussions.
Yeah. So like the idea that, and again, Keon Coleman was suspended by the team. Like, granted, it was only a quarter, but how often does that happen? Like, he was missed the first part of the Jack. What, the Bills won 80-0 or whatever it was that night. Didn't matter, but those are like the little tells here that, okay, and you have countless examples, in this league. Eric Moulds being one of them. Eric Moulds came in, oh my God, it's a bust. Year 3, Doug Flutie, whoa! All of a sudden became you're one of the top 5 wide receivers in the league. I'm not exaggerating. I don't know, that's the ceiling for Keon Coleman, but can he, from year 1 to year 2, kind of take that step? We've seen it a lot, but that's going to be one of the storylines.
Right. You can either move on, you grow up and move on, or you grow up and get moved on from. So there's a 3-year window usually for receivers, and we'll see how year 2 goes.
Yeah, and if you're driving around Saturday afternoon, we've got St. John Fisher Lacrosse Senior Day taking on Hartwick. If the Cardinals win Wednesday, they win Saturday, they will be the number 1 seed in the Empire 8. And during that, we will send it back to the High Falls Studios where Tim Schneider will give us the Bills picks.
We'll have some fun with it.
Yeah.
We'll
Did you
say
write down
some
the
names
Trapassos? Yeah, Elijah Badger. These are the 3 day 3 sleepers. Ready? So Badger, who is the wide receiver out of Florida, who Chris Trapasso comped to Steph Diggs. Whoa, okay. Brandon Swinson from LSU is an edge. Just didn't get a lot of time. As did the tight end Dupre from Alabama, compared him to Dawson Knox. All right, so I have that written down.
I hope to say those names on Saturday afternoon when we've got running clock going.
Now, you and I are in the same boat, too. Give me all the picks in advance on X. I am not one, I need to watch the product in television. No, the idea that the NFL, no, we're not going to tip these picks. That's cute. I'm sorry. They're so far behind on television that you look online. I need to know in exact real time, not the TV product, what's happening.
The first round I like to see on TV just because it's kind of a spectacle. But once you get into 100th overall and beyond, let's fire this out and move on, be done.
Right. Yeah.
Let's wrap this thing up and start building a roster.
We've got happy hour coming up next here in the Sports Bar. Time for your calls on the Good Smoke Barbecue and Pub Wingman line at 866-4FAN, 866-4326. Award-winning barbecue from Good Smoke Barbecue and Pub, 135 West Commercial Street, East Rochester. GoodSmokeBBQ.com.
You're listening to the Sports Bar with Danger and Battaglia. and streaming online and in the Odyssey app at The Fan Rochester. The sports leader, 95.7 FM and AM 950. The Fan Rochester, an Odyssey sports station. The Fan Rochester Sports Update.
Welcome to NFL Draft Week. The Buffalo Bills picking at 30 coming up Thursday night. Steve Tasker today on One Bills Live talking about Tre'Davious White. Still thinks he has some left.
And I think he does have some pretty good football in him. Certainly, he's going to play better for Buffalo than he has any place else. That's just the way it kind of works. That's what I'm counting on. Trey gives you some credibility. You know, even if he's not the same player, he gives you credibility at the position, right? So now, how does that change things? I don't know.
Patriots Day in Boston. First up, it's the Marathon and some Rochester pride. Our own Joey Whalen, 20th overall, 2 hours, 12 minutes, and 16 seconds. Red Sox over the White Sox, 4-2. Yankees beginning a series tonight in Cleveland. The Red Hot Mets hosting the Phillies. The Red Wings opening a series tomorrow in Buffalo. Gene Battaglia, the sports leader, 95.7 FM and AM 950, The Fan Rochester.
The Sports Bar with Danger and Battaglia.
My gosh, I'm just so excited. NFL Draft Week is here.
And then we start having the NFL vets start trickling in because they're going to get ready for camp to start.
We will hear from Josh Allen and Brandon Beane tomorrow.
Mike Danger.
When I say I'm on assignment, I am kind of on assignment. It's just not really on assignment for the Sports Bar.
Gene Battaglia.
Danger, you need coaching here, buddy.
Oh, really? I need coaching.
Yes.
Says the guy who can't bet me a box of wine.
I would never pass up the opportunity to be on air with you.
Max Fried lost his no-hitter in the 8th inning after the official changed the call.
Duke star freshman Cooper Flagg, projected number 1 pick, is entering the NBA draft.
Of course, now the start of the playoffs.
NBA playoffs, NHL playoffs.
Amerks Crunch, Friday at 7.
Tune in for Game 1.
The Nighthawks also secured a spot in the NLL playoffs.
It's also Dingus Day. You could really get your groove on.
My dinner was cat food.
95.7 FM and AM 950 The Fan, Rochester.
Hi, stepping into happy hour as we welcome you back. Danger will be back on Wednesday, joined by Terrible Take Timmy in the sports bar. By the way, Thursday, come on out, Three Heads Brewing, neighborhood of the Yards, where we will enjoy the kind. It's always a great time for a kind IPA. So thanks to our good friends at Three Heads for once again hosting us. We'll be doing our show there 3 to 6 coming up on draft day, setting you up for the draft, see what we did there. Again, that's become our tradition here in the sports bar. As one thing, Tim, I didn't realize today, but I was listening to Eisen today. Do you know that you have to go back? The way he phrased it was the year that the Niners traded with Kansas City Joe Montana. The last time we entered a draft where the draft order is exactly that.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah, it's just like there hasn't been any movement.
The first time in 31 years or whatever, there will be trades come Thursday, but I think we're going to enter the draft without a single. It's 1 through 32 the way it's supposed to be.
Yeah,
it'll change, but this is almost unprecedented. So
I think a couple reasons. One, it has to be really rare and really, hey, we're going to go for this. And in this current NFL, like, the teams are really good. You don't have, like, if you have a team that's on the upswing. When Buffalo was on the upswing, okay, first round pick, there you go, Minnesota, we want Steph Diggs. Like, you don't have that anymore, teams flipping first round picks. Number two, why do first round picks get flipped? Because of quarterbacks.
Right.
Nobody
and now it's Cam Ward, and that's about it. Like, you can fall into Shedeur Sanders this year. Like, the Saints might have him drop into their lap at 9 or wherever he goes. I don't know if you necessarily have to trade up. You might feel nervous that somebody's going to jump you, and you might do that to stay out in front of it. But it might not be a necessity this year to do that.
Well, it's funny. Like, if Shedeur Sanders, I wouldn't judge what the Saints do as far as will Sanders make it in this league or not. Follow me on this, because if you're saying, hey, the Saints are ready to go, but they just need a quarterback, Sanders at 9 makes all the sense. And that probably is the way they're thinking. The way they should think is their cap is a disaster. Their roster is terrible. They're picking the top 10 for a reason, and they don't have a quarterback. Build the line. Get the best lineman available, whoever that may be, and then you know what you do? You do a secret tank this year, and then you draft a quarterback next year, because I don't think that Shedeur Sanders or any of these quarterbacks are going to all of a sudden be the next Jaden Daniels in this draft, even Cam Ward at number 1 overall.
I do like Cam Ward. I'm not sold on the rest of them. And yeah, if you're pre-scouting, they know who's going to be around next year in the draft. If there's a guy out there that you prefer, you kind of shut it down this year. Go your uncompetitive 3-14, get a top 3 pick, and then you get a guy that you are interested in, or you kind of do what the Browns did 10 years ago, where you take a player at 4 or wherever they were. It was the Sammy Watkins trade year,
right?
And then they traded back in for Johnny Manziel. Obviously, that didn't work out, but you can, if Sanders keeps falling, you can find your way in the 20s and buy back into that round, and you get a guy there that might hold some value.
ESPN, NFL Network, they're hoping that Sanders falls because that's really what and he's not going to be at the draft, by the way, so that you're not going to have that image of him in the draft room waiting. You'll have other guys, but that's going to be the one like, wait a second, there's still somebody on the board that we're all familiar with. What's going on? It's funny you brought up that Sammy Watkins trade. Oh my gosh.
The glory days.
So many missteps by the Buffalo Bills over the years, but the Bills picking again at 30. I'm of the opinion that we will have that same sort of empty feeling, meaning, you're going to invest all this time Thursday night and only to see the Bills trade out of it, because I think there will be opportunity. But as far as these teams in the top 10 moving up for a quarterback or whatever, I don't know if I see that or not. This is where Tim also, and if you're watching on YouTube right now, by the way, thanks to our buddy Chris in South Central Kentucky, who was actually back in Rochester visiting family this week. He dropped off some goodies. It's not necessary, okay, for you to buy us things. We don't, actively seek that, but we want to thank anybody who does that. So thank you, Chris. It's not necessary.
Cool.
Okay, but that's cool. But I'm not raising one of what he brought. I'm just raising my water bottle. Let us not forget, Tim Schneider, the great job that Coach Mayo did in this draft, helping the Buffalo Bills, Mr. Mayo, Gerard Mayo, by not accepting the code red, by not laying down and losing in Week 18, and thus the Patriots would have had the number 1 overall pick. And the Patriots would have been entertaining offers for that quarterback that's going to go number 1 overall to Tennessee now. By winning that game, you dropped 3 spots. For what? Why?
It literally cost him his job, too.
It cost him his job. And, okay, well, we wanted to showcase the quarterback. You moved him to Dallas for nothing. Milton. And okay, boy. Oh, that was worth it.
Well, the crazy thing is, too, it's like you don't want to. These guys are competitors. So, of course, they're going to go out there and try to win. And it's their job on the line, win or lose. But to actually get fired for succeeding at the task at hand is hilarious because of the fallout that came from it. Like they've got their quarterback in Drake May. They're not going to draft Cam Ward at 1 or whoever they decide is the guy.
Like people in Boston were upset. It's not you're dealing with a smart fan base, and and certainly we're a smart fan base over here. We're laughing. Like, what does it matter? I don't care if the Bills win this game. No, let's just get out of this. It's a preseason game essentially. Healthy, that's it. And good on the Patriots for winning that game and costing themselves the draft position. And the funny thing about that was what was the exact time following the final gun of that game?
Right. It was within an hour. I think it was like 40 minutes.
Yeah. It was, you're fired. Like, did Robert Kraft, that's one of those things like Wickersham, get on this, write an addendum to your book. Was he seething, going down the elevator and just like, that's it, you're gone?
Right. Like a victory that cost them millions of dollars. I mean, they'll save money on who they pick now because it's not going to cost them number 1 overall money, but that costs them jersey sales. It costs them notoriety. They're in the news as what are they going to do? Trade capital.
See, here's a
costly victory.
Here's not the low-hanging fruit take that Robert Kraft's to blame, because if he were to have fired Gerard Mayo, you put some interim coach, special teams, or Darren, whatever, like somebody that's overmatched that would fail at that position, and the guys would not rally around. And that's your interim head coach in Week 18.
Right, and they got everything that didn't need to happen happen to them, and now they've got their guy in Vrabel, and they've got their quarterback in May. So I think they're probably better off. But having that number 1 overall pick, or at least the ability to dangle that for more and trading down, that's gone. And who knows what would have happened with this draft structure that we're talking about, 1 through 32 being 1 through 32, if it wasn't the Titans at 1 and it was the Patriots. There's a trade already probably with the Patriots going somewhere.
Well, is this the year, Tim? And we could say this confidently, like we never have picked the top 5, 1 through 5, correctly. But is this the year? Meaning, okay, let's nod our head or just everybody say aye. Cam Ward to Tennessee. We agree.
Aye.
Travis Hunter to the Browns at number 2.
Fine. Aye. Like, I have preferences, but yeah, aye.
Okay. Now, some would say this is where the draft starts.
Yes.
The Giants on the clock select Abdul Carter, number 3.
Aye.
Aye. Patriots take that lineman at left tackle.
I go Graham there, Mason Graham.
Okay.
Michigan.
Okay, maybe it's the Patriots at 4. This is today's story. And again, there are lies, and then there's draft day lies, draft week lies. So take it for what it's worth. But a team that we really don't talk a lot about. I remember I made fun in the infancy of social media, and you were there. All of a sudden I got, all the first wave or what nation or whatever they call themselves. What do they call First Coast? That's what they call them. In Jacksonville, they got all upset with me, it was something poking fun at them. Duval. Please, it's the accidental market of the NFL. Really, it is. How did you let Jacksonville in? Please, there's no TV, there's no corporations. You have a guy that's trying to do whatever he can to move the team to London. But I digress. They're the Jacksonville Jaguars again, picking in the top 10. They've done this before. They once a time took a running back, number 4 overall, and Leonard Fournette. Well, he was really good. Okay, I got that. Well, Gene, this is a completely different regime. It is, but it's the same owner.
It's a meddling, peddling owner, too.
Yeah.
He's got his hands too far in it, which is why they draft where they do every year.
Yeah, and so now Cohen, the new head coach, the guy who said Duval, that guy who, hey, they did have a good running attack in Tampa last year, but they didn't spend big capital on it. The rumor is, take it for what it's worth, Ashton Genty to Jacksonville. Tim, I want to see Ashton Genty on a team that matters. I don't want to see him on
Georgia is probably what I have for Jacksonville, but they need so many things that they could take the flashy Genty and run with it, because that's what he will be.
Well, since 2015, you've had, 6 guys that have gone in the top 10. And it varying degrees here. It's just like the NFL draft. Todd Gurley was a top 10 pick. That was Jeff Fisher. Jeff Fisher making that pick. And it seems like, that guy's not in the Hall of Fame. Todd Gurley burned very brightly. He was the best running back in the game. I think that was a pick that was well worth it for the Rams. A debatable one at number 4 overall the very next year in Zeke Elliott out of Ohio State. Zeke Elliott, I think his freshman year in the NFL, rookie season, mixing my metaphors, he carried that team. I thought he did. I thought he did a fine job, and then they probably stuck with him too long. He's still kicking around, right? Zeke Elliott, okay, that's a mad pick. I'm sorry. Next year at number 4 overall, Leonard Fournette, no.
Fine career, but yeah, not at that spot.
No, but then you have
But he was good. He was good when they that playoff game that season when they beat the Bills in the wild card round, I think it was.
Yeah,
he had a really good couple of years, but you've got to rationalize the running back spot.
Yeah, Christian McCaffrey by the Panthers, 2017, 8th round pick.
That was a good one. On top of, he's a great player, but they were also able to get rid of him in a return. I don't recall exactly what it was, but I think it was a couple first-round picks. And
no, not even close.
I think that they got a pretty good return from the Niners for that trade.
Nope. We go. I'm going to say a 3rd and a 5th because I remember thinking, okay. We're going to call this a draw.
Meet in the middle?
4 draft picks. 2nd rounder, 3rd rounder, 4th rounder, and 5th rounder. So there didn't involve 2 first-round picks, but it was more than a third.
Return, though, for a running back.
He's a Hall of Famer.
I would not.
A Hall of Famer, Christian McCaffrey.
Assuming he remains healthy for 3 or 4 more years, yes.
And then Saquon Barkley by doing what he did last year with the Philadelphia Eagles. Someday we'll be in Canton. I'm sorry, Giant fans. That's going to happen. The one where the verdict is out, and I know a lot of fantasy players are like, oh, Bijan Robinson entering year 3.
I think he's a stud, at least for fantasy purposes. I don't know if he's top 10 overall as a running back. That's the dicey thing about it, because they don't last long enough.
Right. That's the thing. Like, any of these guys, you are going to be faced with the ultimate decision. Do you give this guy the second contract? And the Giants, for whatever reason, decided, you know what? We're going to give Daniel Jones the money and not Saquon.
Right. The Giants botched that. The Cowboys botched it in the reverse direction.
And the Panthers decided, nah, Christian McCaffrey, not for us.
Gurley kind of fizzled out on his own there.
He got the arthritis in the knee, and that was that.
Fournette wasn't paid by Jacksonville. So it's a 3 or 4 year window for these guys, and you've got to make it work.
That's why running back in the first round, Tim. And we were joined by Nate Geary last hour, and he brought up the name. Well, if the Jags actually do that, would the Bills be making a call on Travis Etienne? And I would say, no, please no. No, you can get production anywhere at the running back position. I'm sorry that you're devalued. I'm sorry. But Saquon Barkley, unicorn.
Yeah.
Like, the Giants didn't realize what they had. They just were kind of put off by him being injured a few times. Probably the same thing with Christian McCaffrey. But the Panthers is a little different. They were kind of in teardown mode at that point. And then Bijan Robinson might be a miss. The point being that Genty will be exciting. It'll work for maybe a year or 2. But if you're drafting in the top 10, the objective is, this is a guy that we're going to give a second contract to in 5 years. If the answer is you don't know, then you don't draft him.
Right. It's a franchise stabilizing pick typically. If you're drafting that high, it's a highly talented player, and if you hit on it, they're around for a while. I'll never forget. I think it might have been the same draft year as Sammy Watkins, and we've got these players. He just retired. The offensive lineman. He just retired from the Cowboys, but that pick was vilified because it was boring and not flashy, and that guy's going to go in the Hall of Fame, and he changed the scope of the franchise, then it allowed them to draft Zeke Elliott shortly thereafter. So when you get a lineman who's boring, you make it work.
Our phone number, 866-4FAN, 866-4326. Brad in Rochester. What's up, Brad?
Hey. I think Dallas, who you're just talking about, I think they could do something nuts and probably trade up to 4 and pick up Genty just to get ahead of Jacksonville and Vegas to get their running back. And you can see Jerry doing that without even a second thought.
Jerry and Kraft, how close are they? I think they're close, aren't they?
They're peas and carrots.
Yeah.
I'm sure they would make a deal. And then next thing you know, oh my gosh, Dallas is on the clock. Jerry gets his flash player. He looks like he is superhero. Oh my gosh. And yeah, you can see that happening.
I can
and
definitely
see
that happening.
Yeah.
And Jacksonville is talking that up. So guess what? Someone else could come up and jump ahead of them or trade with them. And so there's the thought there. I think Dallas is dumb enough to do that.
That's a good point. I think I agree with you, actually. It's tough to map out fake trades and stuff, but I think that there's a path there for Dallas to do something crazy or stupid, or phrase it how you want, by jumping up to 12 from 12. You have the Patriots move back down. They get more draft assets to protect and enhance Drake May. I don't know what that trade would entail, but if the Cowboys, if any team is going to do it, it's going to be the Dallas Cowboys, and then drafting Genty, and that prevents the Raiders from getting him. Where I've got him going. Jacksonville is a mess and needs a little bit of everything, so then they get the best available player if it's Genty's off the board. So yeah, that is a fun little thing that we can look at here if it turns into something.
Got to credit Tim for pointing this out. Not you, Tim, but another Tim.
What do we got?
Do you have I don't know on your side of the board. Do you have internet access? Because I want to get your real-time reaction on this. Okay, so there's a story about the Buffalo Bills that is just posted on ESPN.com. I'm like, ooh. And it's a story about a trade. Go to ESPN.com and then click on the Bills page and read to me what the story they put up there 7 hours ago.
I think you asking if I had the internet shut down my internet.
Okay, all right. Then I will tell everybody. If you go to that right now, sources, Bills trade Cordy Glenn, move up in draft. April 21st, 2025.
What?
What?
Where are we?
What?
Where am I?
What are we? Yeah, what year is this? It says April 21st, 2025.
When I got here, I told you I was in a time warp, so maybe that's what's happening.
This is like, what are we doing? Have we stepped into a portal? What are we doing?
This is on ESPN right now?
This is on ESPN right now. Bengals to acquire left tackle Cordy Glenn for Bills team swap first-round picks. April 21st, 2025. 10:21 a.m.
That is
okay. That's yeah. So I understand, like, you get software glitches every once in a while, but you would think, like, at some point somebody would say, hey, you might want to take this down somehow. A story from draft.
Is, what, 2018, actually? Like, this is 7 or 8 seasons ago.
Yeah. Yeah, that was, again, that was a move, and it wasn't draft week. It was prior to that, the Bills had picks 22 and 23. Pick one of the two was the pick, right, from Patrick Mahomes from Kansas City. So they own Kansas City's pick. But how did you parlay those two picks then to move all the way up? It was Cordy Glenn, who was the Bills' left tackle at that point. Cincinnati needed a left tackle. And the Bills, let's see. Well, I could look it up right now thanks to this. The Bills traded. It was number 21 and 22. I beg your pardon. Bills moved up 9 slots to number 12. And then the Bills moved up from 12 to number 7. And that's how they got Josh Allen. Unbelievable.
And now he's a superstar, and I think 7 hours ago, I think it's supposed to be a Y and not an H.
Yeah.
So interesting. Yeah.
ESPN's Mike Rodak contributed a report. I'm sure Mike Rodak is surprised that he's got a byline today on ESPN.com.
Should reach out for payment.
Yeah, that should be it. Thank you, Brad, for the call. 866-4FAN, 866-4326. We've got shots coming up in the sports bar where we will talk about these Rochester Americans, the Nighthawks. All right, they're in the postseason, but not what everybody had hoped for. Those stories and more coming up here on the Fan Rochester.
Sports Update.
Welcome to NFL Draft Week. Coming up Thursday night, the Bills, for right now, picking at 30. Steve Tasker today on One Bills Live talking about those needs.
So this draft, you say what you want out of it. If you can get a couple of starters out of it, contributors. If we get two guys that like line up on day one, opening day, it's a home run on this roster because it's hard to make, let alone start above the guys that are already there.
Today, it's Patriots Day in Boston. That means the Boston Marathon, and we certainly have a Rochester angle. Joey Whalen from Webster, 20th overall in the Boston Marathon, tearing it up at 2 hours, 12 minutes, and 16 seconds. Boston Red Sox today over the White Sox, 4-2. Yankees tonight in Cleveland, Mets hosting the Phillies. Rochester Red Wings open a series tomorrow in Buffalo. Gene Battaglia in the sports leader, the Fan Rochester.
Rochester's home for live sports and the best sports talk anywhere. The Sports Leader, 95.7 FM and AM 950. The Fan, Rochester.
We might be hearing from Joey Whalen here in a little bit. Good friend of the show, and congratulations. I can't even imagine running that for 1 mile, much less 26. And was it Heartbreak Hill in the Boston Marathon? Now, if you're not familiar, like New York, it's like anybody can run New York, but Boston got to qualify. That's like the best of the best.
Yeah, there was a bit last year on CMF. I said, and I meant it, and I still mean it, that I could wake up and run a marathon, like complete it. There's no way I could actually competitively do it. And the math on that is like 12 miles an hour. That's on foot. That's insane.
No, you could be Susie Shuffles and just plod your way along and run a 15-minute mile. That's not what we're talking about, though.
Correct.
Anybody could, so it's a little nuance there. You would be embarrassing yourself if, okay, and, people waiting around, looking at their watches. Oh, here comes the guy.
Well, they do have time limits
and
and stuff on it. That's part of the – I think it's got to be under 6 hours. And they just cart you away.
I don't know.
But, yeah, 2 hour and – what was it? 2 hours and 12 minutes? And 10 minutes off the leader, which is an insane number.
Joey's from, originally, I think from Texas, and now is here. He's married to Monica, a good friend of the show, too. So I did text him, hey, can you call in? Yeah, they're going to call in. So
awesome.
We'll talk to them. Tricky thing about the Amerks, Tim, is that the opening round's only a best of 5. Okay, everybody,
like it's the best of
here is the ride that is known as the Calder Cup Playoffs. Welcome aboard. It's going to be the ride of your life here. Bad bounce here and off night there. You could be in trouble. That's why we're signing up for this. So it's fair to say the opening round against Syracuse, Tim, it's as difficult as any round in this Calder Cup run. You hope it will be a long one. Another part of this, if it goes to 5 games, oh my gosh, this gets stretched out to 3 weekends. Friday and Sunday, games 1 and 2. Friday night, 7:05. Sunday, 3:05. We have both of them. Games 3 and 4 are in Syracuse. Thursday, May the 1st, and Saturday, May the 3rd. And then, if you need a game 5, that would be here Friday, May 9th.
And I think that means if this ends in 3, we're just sitting around for a week and a half because they don't redo the dates. If say the Amerks get through this series in 3 and Laval does the same just based on seeding, I don't think that series can start until after May 9th. I don't think they readjust it. I think the dates are locked in.
Yeah,
that's a long time.
I'm not sure about that, but the point is that you have this week, and we don't have to concern ourselves with this, a 4-5 matchup in Cleveland, Toronto, the winner facing Laval, and we have to say go Marlies or go Monsters. I want no part of Laval. Laval has the most points in the league. Primo, probably the Canadians will be knocked out by that point. I'm hoping that, if the Montreal pulls off an upset, then you don't have to worry about it.
Right. If they bring down their NHL reinforcements, the best team in the American Hockey League gets even better. So crazy. It's going to be a crazy couple of, hopefully, months here for Amerks hockey, but I'm excited for it, and hopefully this gets started on a positive note come Friday.
So I went to the Nighthawk game Saturday night, and look, there is something, a mantra we have in the sports bar. Don't complain about officiating. Officials didn't win you the game. They didn't lose you the game. Okay, that being said, the officials did not lose the Nighthawks the game. When I'm looking at hits in the back, contact from behind, contact to the head, and nothing's getting called, and you have all 6,400 people at the Blue Cross Arena chanting, refs, you suck, refs, you suck. I'm like, what am I watching? Get better officiating in this league, please. Nighthawks losing the regular season finale to Toronto. It turns out it didn't matter because, well, the Nighthawks would have needed Vancouver to lose. They didn't. They beat Philadelphia. So it's Rochester at Vancouver Saturday night. 1-game winner take all. 10 o'clock Eastern time, Tim.
That's that's how the West Coast works, I guess. That's a really, hopefully they win, but that's a long trip if it goes awry, and a late start time, a late arrival time back here. Hopefully it's with a victory and we're planning a home game here for the Nighthawks.
Yeah, and if you're doing like the seeding and the brackets, okay, so I should know this if they reseed or not, but let's assume everything held with the exception of a 5-4, which isn't an upset. And again, it's only one game the way they do this. It would be Rochester or Buffalo the next round.
Yeah, and it does not look like they reseed, but that at least it's a series.
Yeah,
so.
That's a series, which would be outstanding. Who wins the NBA MVP? I mean, most would say SGA from OKC, but Nikola Jokic just finished the season averaging a triple-double, joining Russell Westbrook, Oscar Robertson, the only players ever to accomplish that feat. Giannis is also a finalist. That's the story here, the 3 finalists named. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, the clear favorite to win the MVP. The better play, though, we'll talk to PJ Glasser about this, might be finals MVP, where Gilgeous-Alexander is actually a plus 180 right now.
I like SGA. Jokic is probably the most talented player in the league. I just don't know if Oklahoma City, they had a great season. I just don't know if they have, the West is so strong up top that they might run into some issues even before the final. So they might not get there. There's value in it, sure, but there's way too many options in the West to comfortably make that bet, at least on my end of things at the moment.
It's April. That being said, an interesting series begins in Queens tonight. The Mets hosting the Phillies. New York coming off a 4-game sweep of the Cardinals. The last time New York swept St. Louis in a 4-game series was in 1986. Tim, do you know what happened in 1986?
I think I saw it on TV. The ball went through the legs of somebody.
Yeah.
And somebody did
Were you even born in 86?
No, I was not. 88.
Francisco Lindor downplaying the series, by the way, saying it's all early here, which, okay, that's the disclaimer. Doesn't mean it can't be fun. Do you remember this from the Super Bowl in the streets of New Orleans? Patrick Mahomes Sr. getting into it with former Major League pitcher John Rocker. We were all left wondering, okay, was that real? Turns out it was not at all real. Both men being compensated for a boxing match that was being subsidized by Barstool. Well, the fight's off, and Rocker's not too happy about it. Instead of fighting today, he went off. Backed out like a little blank. This is him against Patrick Mahomes because his son and his loser wife decided it would be a bad look for the family to have him get in the ring.
Wasn't there some drama with this afterwards, too, with, like, being on probation? Like, this was a violation of it or something? And
correct. So, like, the whole
thing was a mess.
The whole concept is ill-advised. And when you get to that level of fame, like Patrick Mahomes, and, like, everything is like, man, his father has some demons.
Yeah.
But heck, his brother. There's some crazy in that family.
And the wife, the loser wife or whatever.
Well, the loser wife, would give her a pass. She's a little outspoken for sure, but it's not bothering him at all in the field, though.
A guy knows how to put the distractions away. I mean, he's dealt with this his entire life, so it's not like it's something he's not used to. That's an unfortunate reality. Yeah. But, yeah, he's able to put aside family gossip and family drama and go out there and win some Super Bowls.
Coming up Wednesday, Jay Binkley, 96.5, The Fan in Kansas City, will be returning into the sports bar. He's got a draft podcast, and he'll be telling us what the Chiefs will do and what the Bills won't do and blah, blah, blah. Coming up next, we have time for your calls, 866-4FAN, 866-4326. Last call here in the sports bar.
You're listening to the Sports
isn't behaving and they can't get a signal. So
yeah,
you
just ran 26 miles in 2 hours.
Yeah,
Probably
right.
taking a nap.
Yeah, kind of doing that. That'd be funny. Like, could Joey Whalen in 10 miles? Could Tim outpace Joey Whalen? You run 3 miles, he runs 10.
He would beat me, 100%.
Yeah, 100%.
I could probably do 3 miles in 20-something minutes. I'm probably about a 6-minute mile, and I have no gas in me. So if I've got to do more than 5 of them, it's not going to go well.
No.
And he did that in 2 hours' time at a 26-mile clip. That's wild. That's an achievement that is unseen by many.
That is something. Boy, cannot wait for the draft. And it's going to be coming up Thursday. You don't have to RSVP, but our guy, John, Yacht Rock John, will be there. Thank you, John, for RSVPing. Also, our guy, Aaron, who is a big Cowboy fan, also officially RSVPing for Three Heads. Be there right after work. Hey, yeah, look, you don't have to be there all 3 hours. Just stop in, say hello, have a cold one with us. Again, Three Heads Brewing. It's always great time for a kind IPA, 3 to 6. We're going to have some special guests, and it's not only just kind of like draft, but to me, it's like, okay, we made it through. We can safely say that you don't need your snowblower anymore in this town. Like, there are nicer days ahead. These are the days that we were looking forward to. And to me, that's kind of what the NFL draft kind of someday when it comes to Buffalo, I'm trying to imagine what that'll be like, and I'm just hoping that Mother Nature will be kind to Western New York, because you never know what you would get. We could get 35 and some snowflakes, and that would be appropriate. And who knows? Like, I think it's going to be okay in Green Bay this week, from what I'm hearing.
It'll be a fun experience no matter what. I don't know the weather out there, but it's a small city that always does a good job with their NFL assignments, so it's going to be different than it's been in years past in Nashville and stuff like that, but it'll be a fun experience for the people that are out there.
See, like, if you host it in Buffalo, I think I would want to, like, downtown right by City Hall in that square, but I know probably they would want to showcase the new stadium, and that's fine,
it's got to be – that's tough too, because when the NHL does their scouting combine and stuff out there, it's all Harbor Center and whatnot, but that's not where the Bills stuff is, so you've got to find a happy medium between – Orchard Park and the actual city.
I think you would probably have it in Orchard Park, and just like, we don't get stadiums too often anymore. You had it in Jerry World the one year. Kansas City was, by the train station there. Vegas was a major disappointment. Vegas, like, I'm watching this on television. I'm like, this doesn't feel like Vegas. This just feels like an airplane hangar. What are we doing?
Like the Sacramento A's setup with the doing it out of a shed.
Yeah.
They tried, though. I mean, it's a fun event if you can pull it off successfully. So Thursday will be fun, and the rest of the weekend is what it is. So something to look forward to for at least the Browns getting to pick in the top 5 yet again.
So what's great about this time of year, playoff action every night, 7:30 tonight for the Knicks and Pistons, and then the Clippers and Denver. Denver looking to go up 2-0 in that series. But to be honest, I like the way the NHL does it, because the NBA wants you, and baseball's guilty of this too, they think that we're all going to sit and watch every single game. No, it's okay to kind of overlap. And the NHL tonight, you're going to overlap, not to the point where you're not going to have 2 games finishing up at the same point, but 7 o'clock tonight for Canadians Caps, 7:30 for Game 2 of Winnipeg St. Louis, Game 2 of Dallas Colorado at 9:30, and then our last Game 1 actually happens, if you can stay up tonight, Kings and Oilers, 10 o'clock. All those games either on ESPN or ESPN2.
Just give me a multiple overtime game and whet my appetite for the rest of this Stanley Cup run, because you can get me into a 3 or 4 overtime hockey game, especially the West Coast ones. It starts at 10, hockey ending at 3 a.m. Awesome. It's hard to stay awake for.
It's hard to stay awake.
But I will make playoff hockey as appointment television for me.
It's a little light on Sabres news today, too.
I mean,
it's
always.
Not like, honestly, like if you were hoping for some sacrificial lamb or some news like, hey, see, there's the best you could hope for is they sent back Kulik.
Yeah,
that's huge.
The Amherst brought back Kulik, Roseanne, Kozak, and Osland, and all four of those guys should slot into the Calder Cup lineup immediately in a prominent role.
Yeah.
So this team is run by the success of Devin Levi, and bringing those guys back for some offensive firepower. I'm excited. I'm hopeful, but I know that playoff hockey is a different beast. No pun intended on Levi's nickname, but it's different come playoff game 1 as opposed to 1 through 72 regular season.
Does Devin Levi wear his Amerks mask or his Sabres mask?
I think that was a fit problem because he wore it and then he took it off. So
was it a fit problem or a superstition problem?
Could be. I mean, he's a very regimented athlete.
He is goalies are normally that, but he is super wound tight like that. That should be a lot of fun. You know what the music means, Tim.
It means you've got 45 seconds to wrap it up.
Well, let's see. I can always hit the post here. Special thanks today to Chris DePasso, CBS Sports. Also to Nate Gary, WGR and the Buffalo Bills Radio Network. If you missed those interviews, here's what you do. You download the free Odyssey app, and you can go back, Sports Bar, and everything is nicely laid out for you there. Tomorrow on the show, Matt Perino, Syracuse Post-Standard. We'll also talk to head coach Mike Leone of the Rochester Americans. And you, whether you like it or not, Tim, you're going to be back tomorrow.
I will be back, and I'm looking forward to it.
The JR Sport Brief is coming up next. For Tim Schneider, my name is Gene Battaglia, and thank you for listening to Rochester's only local daily sports talk show. It's the Sports Bar, 95.7 FM and AM 950, The Fan Rochester. See, look, I can hit a post.
You're listening to the Sports Bar with Danger and